Good afternoon and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting. I would also like to welcome those members of the press and public who are joining us via the live stream. Before we begin, please can I take this opportunity to remind everyone to turn mobiles and computers to silent and ensure that when using the microphones, the red light is on and then turned off when you have finished speaking. We now go to agenda item number 1, which is appointment of the chairman of the Planning Committee for the municipal year 2025-2026. Do I have a nomination?
Councillor Connor.
Do I have a seconder?
I'd like to second Councillor Connor, please.
Are there any further nominations? In the absence of any further nominations, I declare that in his absence, Councillor Connor has been appointed Chairman of the Planning Committee for the new municipal year. We now go to agenda item number 2, which is apologies for absence. We've had apologies from Councillors Connor and Councillor Meekins, and also apologies from Matthew Lee, Head of Planning. We now go to agenda item number 3, which is the appointment of the Vice Chairman of the Planning Committee for the municipal year 2025-2026. Can I have a nomination for Vice Chairman, please?
I'd like to propose Councillor Charlie Marks for Vice Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that nomination? Councillor Mrs. French, thank you. The nominations? In the absence of any further nominations, I declare that Councillor Marks has been appointed Vice Chairman of the Planning Committee for the municipal year, and I will now hand over to Councillor Marks to chair today's meeting in the absence of Councillor Connor. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Item number 4 is to confirm and sign the minutes from the meeting of the 30th of April 2025. Do I have a proposal to approve these minutes? Councillor French. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gerstner. Thank you. Does any member have any comments to make on these minutes? Please raise their hand. Can I have a show of hands, please, to approve the minutes of the 30th of April 2025? Thank you, that's unanimous. These minutes are agreed. We now go to the agenda item number 5, which is urgent items, and there are none. Agenda item number 6 is declarations of interest. Member services will go to each councillor in turn, and can you please state if you have anything to declare in relation to any agenda items? Joe.
Councillor Benny.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Short one this week. I am a member of Chatteris Town Council, but I take no part in the planning decisions. I usually leave the room and I take no part in the voting. As always, I do know Matthew Hall from Morton Hall. Matthew has done work for me historically, and in fact he's trying to get on with some work for me at the moment for a little project of mine. But this won't interfere with my decision-making process and my thoughts on that one. And as far as I'm aware, I have not been lobbied on any of the applications today, and if anything comes to mind, I will bring that to your attention as soon as I can.
Can I just confirm whether you've got a declaration on item 10?
Item 10's been withdrawn. If it hadn't been withdrawn, I would have said and stood back. So, sorry, Joe.
Sorry, I mean item 12.
Item 12. Oh, sorry, yes. yeah. Sorry, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Joe. Something you've brought to my attention. Thank you very much. Yeah, I do know Councillor Infredon. He has sat on this committee opposite me for probably a good 12 months, maybe 2 years. But I don't socialise with Sydney, and other than my council work, I don't come into contact with him in any way, and I will treat this application as I would any other, with impartial used.
Members, to save you all repeating that, can you just give me a show of hands whether that's an en-bloc declaration, please? Thank you very much. Councillor Mrs French.
Thank you, Joe. I'm a member of Marchtown Council, but don't take part in any planning applications. And as always, a member of Drainage Board.
Thank you. Councillor Gershner.
Thank you. I'm a member of Worcester Town Council. I'm not on their planning committee, but occasionally I sit there to listen as a member of the public. Thank you.
Councillor Marks.
Thank you, Joe. I'm a member of Mainey Parish Council and also attend Chatteris Town Council, neither of which do I take part in any planning. On item number 12, we've already said regarding Councillor Sidney, known to me. On item number 10, the applicant is actually a customer of a business I'm a director of, so I will be stepping back from that, and Councillor Benny will be chairing that part of the meeting, and I'm a member of various drainage boards as well.
Sorry, can I just confirm which item you're stepping away from? Is it agenda item 9? Land northwest of 1C Eastwood End.
Yes, sorry, number 9, I do apologise.
Thank you. And Councillor Senate-Clough.
I'm a member of Whittlesea Town Council, but do not take part in any planning discussions and don't attend the meetings. And I have nothing further to add on agenda item 12 that's already been said. So that's it.
Councillor Purser.
Yes, I'm a member of Marchtown Council, but don't take part or vote in any of the planning decisions. I have been lobbied on item 8, but made no comment on it whatsoever, and still remain open-minded on that. On item number 13, I do know the people they're involved, but don't socialise with them, and I haven't seen them for quite some time, so I'm still very open-minded on that. And I also know Mr. Matt Hall, the agent there, who's presently doing some work for me.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Joe.
Sorry to butt in there. Sorry, I forgot there that on item 12, obviously, I'm like everybody else, I know Sid, but don't socialise with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. We now go to the main part of the meeting. Members should only make a proposal on a planning application when invited. However, I will initially be asking if anybody is going to propose the officer's recommendation. Clearly, if no such proposal is forthcoming, or if that proposal fails, I will then be looking for an alternative proposal. Members are reminded that any such proposal should be accompanied by the planning reasons for doing so. To save time later in the meeting, in respect of agenda item number 10, a request has been received from the applicant to provide further additional information regarding this application. As this application was deferred by the committee previously, to allow us to consider more information, this does not seem to me to be unreasonable, and officers are also content with this course of action. I am therefore in agreement with deferring agenda item number 10. Are members also in agreement with deferring agenda item number 10 from this afternoon's agenda? Please raise your hand. Thank you. Anybody disagrees?
I abstained because I would abstain from
Okay,
that.
okay, sorry, right, okay. Thank you. Item number 10 is deferred, and there will be no further discussion of this item later in the meeting. I will now hand over to Tom Donnelly, Development Officer, to present FYR 20-0234-0, agenda item number 7.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a hybrid application with the outline element seeking permission for the erection of up to 16 dwellings, and the full element comprising the formation of the access, internal road, open space and drainage, including the demolition of an existing dwelling and commercial building on site, and off-site highway works, including the provision of passing bays and a footway link. The location plan and aerial photographs show the site in its wider context. The dwelling to be demolished is located close to the frontage of Bridge Lane in the location of the access to the site. The commercial building to be demolished is located further within the site, close to the northeastern boundary. The red line of the site also extends along Bridge Lane towards March Road to facilitate the off-site works, which we'll look at in more detail shortly. And the area around the site comprises residential development along Bridge Lane and up March Road. A submitted site plan has been provided which showed the access, internal road and centrally located attenuation basin, all of which are fully committed within the application. The dwellings shown there are indicative with no detailed plans or housing mix proposed at this time. However, given the layout of the internal road, it's likely that the final layout would be not too dissimilar to that shown. And along the bottom of the plan there you can see the off-site highway works, which we have a close-up of here. So the proposed works off-site are to take place on the southern side of Bridge Lane and comprise the creation of a 2-metre wide footway extending from the existing footpath at the junction with March Road extending to opposite the site entrance. And further to this, 2 passing places are proposed, which will allow a minimum road width of 5 metres to allow traffic to pass in both directions. So image 1 on this slide is an internal view of the site looking from west to east along the northern boundary of the site with the established landscaping features shown. Image 2 is looking towards the access point and shows the bungalow on the left-hand side there, which is proposed for demolition. Image 3 shows the commercial building that is also proposed for demolition. And finally, image 4 shows the existing dwellings adjacent to the eastern boundary, with the commercial building just out of shot to the right-hand side of the image. So in terms of the assessment of the proposal, the redevelopment of the site for residential purposes is considered to be acceptable, having regard to the brownfield nature of the site, and also giving consideration to a 2018 approval for residential development on site. The proposed off-site highway works are considered to be deliverable and acceptable, although these would need to be secured via a legal agreement. Having considered the changes to the character and appearance of the area through various approvals, it's now considered the proposal would not result in a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the locality. It's therefore considered acceptable in planning terms and accordingly recommended for recommended for approval subject to the completion of an appropriate legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We have no speakers on this application. I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers. Councillor French.
Thank you. Looking at the date, can you tell me why this has taken 5 years to get in front of us? Has it been stuffed in a cupboard somewhere?
Thank you, through you, Chairman. It's an application that's got quite a lot of different elements going on to it in terms of the viability side of things and also in terms of the highway sort of works as well. Yeah, clearly we aim to get applications out of there a little bit quicker than this, but there have been a number of delays, several of which, it should be said, do actually rest with the applicant in terms of providing the necessary information.
Thank you. If I may come back, I don't see any recommendations or any discussions with any of the drainage boards, and there are drains around there. Do you know if the applicant has been in discussion?
Through Chairman, middle level were consulted on the application. I think that's possibly been on a couple of occasions, given there have been reconsultation exercises undertaken. As members will be aware, middle level are selective in terms of the applications that they comment upon. They're not a statutory consultee. So we've sort of undertaken our part of things in terms of consulting them. Obviously, no representations received in response to that.
If I can come back, I do have a drainage board meeting tomorrow morning, which is the drainage board for this area, so I will take that up with them. Our drainage board meeting last week, they're working on a new policy and hopefully working with Fenland, yourselves in the planning department, to see if we can resolve some of the issues, because we have got lots of issues. But that will be in conjunction with the seminar that's going to take place shortly.
Councillor Endicott.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. The first one is about mitigation in terms of the sewage pumping station, the odour coming from that, because obviously it's 15 metres away. So I wondered how that's going to be dealt with. And I also wanted to ask you about the covenant that restricts the development to 10 dwellings. And if you could explain that a little bit further. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Chairman. So in terms of the impact of the sewage pumping station, as you'll see, Environmental Health have been consulted on the application and have raised no concerns in terms of any environmental effects. That's set out at 5.5 of the officer report. In terms of covenants, not a material planning consideration. That's a separate legal issue for whoever imposed that covenant to deal with.
Any further questions for officers? Councillor Gerstner.
Thank you. Just like you to perhaps explain to us how a viability study was carried out and the no affordable housing, and how the Section 106 money came to what it is at the present time, the agreement that you've reached with the developer.
Thank you, through you, Chairman. So in terms of the legal agreement, the requirements of this are set out at 10.37 of the officer report, which is to basically secure a contribution of £300,000, which will be split between the NHS receiving £13,755 and towards off-site affordable housing £286,244. So the application has been through a viability assessment. As intimated earlier in the response to Councillor French's question, that's one of the reasons why it's sort of taken so long to actually get to determination stage. And the sort of the background to that, again, is all set out within the report, but I suppose the headline is that the application, if granted, would be subject to a legal agreement securing £300,000 to be split, as I've indicated, between the NHS and off-site affordable housing.
Thank you. The left of the money that goes to affordable housing, where does it actually go to?
Through you, Chairman, that will be put in effectively the pot that the council, Fenland District Council, has to deliver affordable housing sort of around the district. You know, I'm certainly not in a position to indicate that it will be going to a specific scheme, but it will be put into the council's pot for delivery of affordable housing.
Thank you. And at what stages would that money be paid?
At the moment, that's probably something that we've got to work out as part of the actual Section 106 agreement. Clearly, the actual housing units themselves are at this stage an outline application, so a reserve matters detailed scheme would need to come in. So in terms of the actual triggers for the delivery of that, I'm guessing that there would need to be a certain number of units actually provided on site to deliver the contribution. As I say, that's probably something that needs working out as part of the actual legal agreement, but certainly it will be delivered before the completion of all 16 units.
Thank you.
Councillor French.
Thank you. Through you, Chairman. With regard to Section 106, can you tell me why it's taking months and months to get these signed? And I'm talking about lots of months.
With respect, through you, Chairman, I don't think that's a matter that is relevant to this particular application or the determination of that this afternoon. I think that's probably something for a separate inquiry to either myself or the head of planning outside of this meeting.
Any further questions for officers? Okay, thank you everyone. I would now like to invite members to debate the item in respect of the material planning consideration relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor French.
Well, I think due to the length of time this application has taken to come to a determination, I'm sure all the details have been worked out, and I really don't think there's much need for much deliberation.
Councillor Gerstner.
Thank you. Just for the record, this is a brownfield site, and I think it's an ideal opportunity to build on that site at this present moment in time. And as Councillor French said, I think it's been built up over a number of years now, and there's really not a lot else to say. We should be building on brownfield sites and not on greenfield sites. Thank you.
Any further debate? No? Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all members. Does any officers have any points of clarification? Okay. So do I have a proposer to go with officer's recommendation to grant planning permission? Councillor French. Do I have a seconder for this recommendation? Councillor Gerstner. We will now go to the vote. If you support the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand.
Unanimous decision, Chairman.
Thank you. Sorry. That proposal has been passed. I will now hand over to Tom Donnelly to present FYR 24 1000F, agenda item number 8.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a full application seeking the erection of 5 dwellings with associated garages and the formation of an attenuation pond. The location plan and aerial photograph identifies the site as being an area of green space surrounded by residential dwellings with relatively high density development present on Morley Way to the north, with much lower density development to the east and west. On this slide, we can see the relationship to the site with the adjacent listed building, which is 31 Norfolk Street, which is highlighted in blue, immediately adjacent to the eastern boundary of the site. The submitted site plan identifies a linear form of development running from north to south within the site, with the access road running tight up against the western boundary of the site. So we've had 4 sets of elevation plans submitted, which are the 4 house types across the 5 plots. All of the dwellings are single story in nature and a palette of materials which match the existing development on Morley Way to the north. We also have a street scene drawing viewing the development as seen from the east of the site. You may just be able to make out the dotted lines above plot 3 and immediately to the left of plot 2, which identify the rough outline of the listed building behind the site and an associated outbuilding on that site also. So image 1, we have an internal view of the site taken from the northwestern corner looking towards the boundary shared with the adjacent listed building. Image 2, taken from the same location, is a view down the site looking from north to south. Image 3 has been taken from an area of open space immediately north of the site, which also shows an example of the existing development on Morley Way, and also showing that the site is currently sort of fenced off from public view and access. And finally, image 4, taken from the driveway of the listed building, 31 Norfolk Street, looking towards the application site in the backdrop there. In terms of assessment of the application, it's been found to be acceptable in terms of principle, design and appearance, amenity impact, highway safety and flood risk. However, it is officer's opinion that the development would result in less than substantial harm to the adjacent listed buildings, however with insufficient benefits arising from the scheme to outweigh the harm caused. The Council's Conservation Officer has considered the proposal and has concluded that this harm would arise through the loss of open space, which has historically contributed to the historic setting of the listed building. As such, it's considered that the proposal is unacceptable in planning terms on the basis of the impact on the designated heritage asset, and it's accordingly been recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We have 2 speakers on this application. Firstly, I would like to invite Steve Dubus, an objector, to make his presentation to the committee. Okay, okay. Gentleman there, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
So good afternoon, my name is Steve Dubois. I live at 31 Norfolk Street, the listed building that borders the proposed development. I oppose the proposal and welcome the Planning Officer's recommendation to refuse. Now, whether or not you agree with the heritage assessment, when it comes to evaluating the recommendation, we are all bound by the same guiding principles. That great weight should be given to the asset's conservation, that the local planning authority shall have special regard to the desirability of preserving the building and its settings. And whilst those are a matter for the committee, the NPPF also states that where a development proposal will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, as is the case with 31 Norfolk Street, this harm should be weighted against the public benefit of the proposal. So what are the benefits of the proposal? Have the next slide, please. Increased housing stock, obviously. Opportunity to monetize an undeveloped parcel of land. And out of due diligence, I would also look to consider the key themes from the 23 letters of support that were provided and weigh these up against the harm to the listed building and the loss of green space. Given more time, I would touch on the increased fire risk. It is a thatched property, the loss of privacy and the lack of community support as evidenced by the 78 letters of objection. Can I have the next slide, please? I appreciate that the FDC are working on a new plan, but as a designated growth village, Wimbledon has reached nearly 3 times its target set in 2014. There is no economic merit in building a further 5 homes. There is a significant pipeline of activity or building or developments in Wimbledon and the wider March area to keep much of the local construction industry busy for quite some time. Building in what is an area favoured by older residents, there is no educational merit. The proposed development would do very little to address the undersubscription of the Thomas Eden local primary school. It has no social merit, it offers no affordable housing, and potentially compounds already stretched medical services. Could I have the next slide, please? I've lived in the village for 25 years. When we moved in, we could see our house from March Road. The hedges were much, much lower, and looking west, we could see the big skies and fen sunsets from our patio. That is the traditional context in which 31 Norfolk Street should be appreciated. Figure 1 not only shows the growth in housing, but the erosion of green spaces within the heart of the village. Have the next slide, please. Figure 2 provides an aerial view of the proposed site. I've circled 31 Norfolk Street for reference. This is how the plot stands today. The modern Morley Way development to the west, the green amenity to the north, acting as a buffer between the old and the new, in line with Wimbledon and Stoney design guidance and codes, which stipulates, and I quote, new developments in proximity to designated and non-designated heritage assets must propose green screenings to mitigate any unpleasant visual impact whilst also preserving key views. So in light of that statement, now consider the impact of the proposal on 31 Norfolk Street. If I could have the next slide. Now, I'm no CAD technician, but whilst I made every effort to draw things to scale, my Photoshop skills have their limitations. So returning to those letters of support, many reference the scheme as being an extension of Morley Way. There is no disputing that access is from Morley Way, but viewed from the air, figure 3 clearly shows it to be a standalone development. It is not a benefit. Next slide, please. Supporters also place significant weight on having the same developer as Morley Way. When we talk about a buffer between old and new, Construct Reasons Limited were the ones responsible for the siting of the green amenity, now an asset of community value, between Morley Way and the heritage part of the village. You can see it in figure 4. Could I have the next slide, or back, please? I think we may have gone ahead, thank you. That says figure 4. That same developer is now proposing to develop a site that is closer to the listed building than the very buffer they created some 20 years earlier. It is simply incongruous and is not a benefit. Finally, supporters of the scheme also believe that there is a need for more bungalows in Wimbledon. The proposed development is for 5 3-bedroom bungalows. Yet, the Wimbledon and Stoney Housing Needs Assessment of January 23 stated that the village far exceeds the national average for built bungalows and suggests that the greater proportion of dwellings are delivered as 2-bedroom dwellings with an emphasis on affordable housing. This is not a benefit. The Fenland plan calls for a presumption in favour of sustainable development. It talks of growth that is not for its own sake. The only true benefit of this proposal is the monetisation of an undeveloped parcel of land, and that is not a public benefit. It is growth for its own sake. To conclude, in line with MPPF guidelines, there is no clear and convincing justification or public benefit that outweighs the harm to the setting of the listed building. To draw any other conclusion would be irrational. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite members to put questions to Mr. Davis. If you would like to ask a question, please can you raise your hand? Starting with Councillor Seneca.
Thank you, Chair. Hello. I'd just like
Sorry,
to...
can you just turn your microphone on?
Hello, start again. The word harm is used quite a lot, and everybody has a different interpretation of what harm means. I wondered if you could just unpack that term in regard to your own experience of what you think that will mean in relation to this development next to your property.
Look, I'm not a planning expert, and I would defer that question to the planning experts, the very same people who have offered or proposed a refusal. But in this case, it is certainly, in my opinion, a view that we have got a heritage and a legacy in terms of that property that stood there for over 200 years in an open space, and then all of a sudden we're now going to enclose that space. That there is a connection, and if you look at some of the other documentation, there is a connection between that property and the other listed building at Addison Road, and that's the field that separates those two. So there is very much a connection between that field and the property at 31 Norfolk Street. I'd invite the planning experts to answer what is a technical question.
Councillor Seneca, I suggest you put your question to officers in a moment. Councillor Benny. Sorry. Yes, certainly, sorry.
I appreciate that there is a technical aspect. I was asking the question from your own personal experience. That was all. I'm well aware of what harm means in terms of what the planning officer meant. I meant from your own perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clough. I did say that with greater time I would touch on other factors. That house has been there for 200 years. It is a listed building. It does not have the modern amenities in terms of things like soundproofing. There's no double glazing, for example. It is a 1.5 elevation building, so effectively, upstairs is plasterboard and thatch. You can literally hear everything outside. It is dependent on its isolation for modern living. It is not conducive to being in an environment with the sort of housing density that you would have as part of a modern development. I think building that close to it is not conducive to that house.
Just come back on that. Thank you. I'm glad that I asked again, because that is the sort of information I wanted to hear. As I'm keeping an open mind on this application, I really wanted to hear from your own perspective. So thank you.
Councillor Benny.
Good afternoon. You bought this house obviously some time ago. Was the field ever part of the land that was associated with that house?
No, certainly not in our lifetime. That was always part of the farm behind it. I think, and again, the planning officers may have further information. I think there is definitely a relationship between that and the house at Addison House with the other listed property, and there may well have been historically a connection between those two properties.
So that the house, was it? I mean, it could go back far further than you can remember. Was that field ever associated with this house? Has somebody sold the land off separately to the house? Is it a separate piece of land, or?
It was always a separate piece of land, but obviously, whilst ownership was different, the location, it has always been in context of that land.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Couple of questions from myself. Could we go back to the slide where we had the imposed, that one, thank you very much. What distance from your property, you talk about noise, do you believe they will be built?
I think the plan is marked up I think the plan is marked up. I think from memory, is it 36 metres, I think?
36, yes,
Yep.
sorry. Yeah, 36. And the second one, how... And second question, proximity to the other buildings around you, is that within the same distance?
No, it's a good question. So clearly, the road to the right is Norfolk Street. It formerly was the High Street. The nearest building is about 25 metres away, and that's the back of the garage. So there's probably a good 30 metres to Norfolk Street.
Thank you. So the new proposed buildings would be 36 metres from the back of their properties as well?
No, that's incorrect, because the thing about 31 Norfolk Street is that it is set back in its plot, whereas every other house along the Norfolk Street is running adjacent to the street. So the one house that is most affected and nearest to the development is the listed building, the thatched property at 31 Norfolk Street.
Sorry, so just to clarify, you are saying that the existing properties are 25 metres from your property. The new proposed properties would be 36 metres from, and they are the rear of the properties.
Yeah, so just to clarify, my neighbours to the front of the property, where incidentally we have double or secondary double glazing, there are roughly 25 metres, and they, you know, in line with the road. This development is at the rear of the house, and that would be effectively 36 metres away, where we don't have those kinds of measures. Might I just add, whilst we're on that subject, one of the things about having a thatched property is that things like Guy Fawkes Night are not the greatest time of year, right? We do have, in our insurance, we're not allowed to have any incineration or burn anything within 100 metres of, or on our property within 100 metres, right? It's a clause within our insurance. Those back gardens will literally be the other side of the hedge. I cannot stop people from having barbecues, from setting off fireworks, from incineration, and potentially I have certainly got 2, if not 3 properties that would be incredibly close to that thatched property.
If I could come back on that, but you also have, as we've said previously, within 25 metres, existing properties who also could have barbecues, fires or whatever. So you already have that existing problem. So would you agree?
I would also agree. And look, the owners of the land have had bonfires on that land in their time. They have set them much further back than this proposed development. But I can assure you that on one occasion we had to call the fire. It only takes one occasion, right? Look, if needs be, I can go and find the date for you. But yeah, it would be incredibly concerning, and these are a lot closer than the some 50 metres away that the owners might have previously had bonfires on.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you very much. I would now like to invite Amy Richards on behalf of the agent to make her presentation to the committee. You also have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, members. We've worked closely with the planning officer, Tom Donnelly, throughout the planning process and dealt with any issues proactively. As noted in his report, the scheme complies with policy LP3 of the local plan, provides a scheme that is in keeping with the surrounding pattern of development in Morley Way and Wagoners Way, and does not give rise to any unacceptable amenity impacts in accordance with policy LP16, and the scheme also accords with policy LP12. The officer even refers to the fact that the plot sizes are generous and avoid a cramped form of development while still making an efficient use of the land. The main issue here is the impact on the listed building at 31 Norfolk Street. As members will be aware from the officer report, the previous scheme for 8 bungalows was withdrawn to try and address the impact of development on the listed property, and the scheme has been reduced to only 5 bungalows with frontage development onto a private road. The road will remain private and not be offered for adoption. All issues around drainage for the development have been addressed in the planning process, and the lead local flood authority have no objections to the scheme. Members should be made aware of the fact that the original listing to 31 Norfolk Street only referred to 3 windows which face east, that's the front elevation of the property, towards Norfolk Street, and part of the original rectangular shaped cottage. More recent additions have been added to the western side of the property together with a detached garage. There are no first floor windows in the listed building facing towards the application site, and as we've just heard, the nearest bungalows in the development are over 36 metres away from the listed building. We've added photographs of the listed building which confirm that there are no windows facing the development. These are taken from estate agents' particulars as the property is currently on the market. Our heritage consultant has tried to address the concerns raised by the Conservation Officer, noting amongst things that the village of Wimblington has significantly changed over the last 100 years from a much smaller village to a growth village, and noting there is nothing to suggest that 31 Norfolk Street has had a direct functional connection with the site, such as grazing or farmland. The site is not known to have ever been grazing land, and the asset is not located within open countryside or on the edge of the village, but instead surrounded by residential development within the heart of the village. The grounds of the listed building primarily extend to the east towards Norfolk Street, where the majority of the bedroom windows face, suggesting that the property is clearly orientated towards the east, and this has formed its primary amenity space. It's considered that the Conservation Officer has given undue weight to the contribution the site makes to the setting of the listed building, and has failed to acknowledge the current setting asset as experienced in, which is one of residential built form. The proposed layout was amended to offer a single line of dwellings to the far west of the site and provide greater distances to the listed building within the spaces between each dwelling, ensuring that the dwellings do not appear as a solid wall of development, and with a variety of roofscapes helping to break up the massing. Members should also be aware that the District Council are looking to sell the open space in Morley Way. So could you just click to the last on that one, thank you. That the applicants provided as part of the original Morley Way development. This will take away the nearby public open space and will no doubt be subject to residential development, removing current green space. We would ask members to look at the benefits of this scheme and what it can provide, and largely the supporting nature of the planning officer's comments, and go against the Conservation Officer's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite members to put questions to Ms Richardson. If you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. Councillor French.
Thank you, Chair. I notice Anglia Water, excuse me, Anglia Water do have... Thank you. I notice Anglia Water have concerns. Have you addressed these concerns?
Yes, there aren't any drainage concerns anymore. It's been dealt with.
Further questions to Ms Richardson? No? Okay. Thank you very much. I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers. Officers are getting away very lightly then. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I would now like to invite members to debate the item in respect of the material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor Gerstner.
Thank you. I think it's going to be a difficult one in the respect that we have a heritage site here. We have a greenfield site that's nearby. I have reservations about the impact on noise and amenity in respect to the questions you brought, Chairman. 25 metres and 36 metres, I think, was the quoted distances away. Where do we value our heritage is the question that needs to be asked. It looks to be a well thought out, designed development. Okay.
Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Chairman. Sitting here listening to the speaker's views, I see what he says. But equally, if this was any other development, the distance between houses is 21 metres. We've got 36 here. I think the developer has worked to try and mitigate the harm to the historic building. Nor should a historic building be a block to development. It's a piece of land. It's well within the build form of Wimbledon. These houses, I've been at Morley Way several times. Myself and Councillor French, when we've done site visits, we've looked at other things down there, and we've been down there to look at stuff. And this piece of land is, and land usage is what we're looking at here today. Is this land suitable to build on? I do take on board the comments about fire risk of a thatched cottage, but that's a risk you take when you buy a thatched cottage. That could come from anywhere. That doesn't necessarily mean if it does catch fire that it's going to come from these 5 dwellings. There is a buyer beware in everything you buy. This piece of land, from what the speaker was saying, has no connection to this house. And I think this has been well planned out. I think consideration has certainly been given to keep the distance away from the heritage asset. We have certainly passed other applications that have been a lot closer to a heritage asset. There was one in Whittlesea we passed a few years ago, and the committee at that point decided that we would build closer to that. So I think that, you know, it's a district-wide policy that we've got, and we have passed stuff there before near a heritage asset. I think look at the size of green that is left there. I think there is sufficient there to safeguard the heritage asset and provide the homes that Fenland so much needs.
Thank you. Councillor Sinnetclough.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the points raised by the 2 members so far. It is a difficult one because I think that the bungalows look of a very nice design. They are some distance away. Somebody mentioned about the 25 metres versus 36 or whatever it is. I mean, there's a point at which I'm thinking, well, do we need to add more properties to surround this historic building though? I keep coming back to LP 18. I'm obviously still deciding myself, but it is a difficult one, weighing up the value of this thatched building with the need for bungalows, and obviously as was stated that the Wimbledon is a growth village, but its growth has been reached, so I'm very much sort of undecided at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Gerstner.
Just one more time. There seems to be a good break between the development and the listed building. It doesn't seem to me to be overdeveloped at all. You know, they look to be, let's say, good formed, good planned buildings. I think there's a need for that type of building, and it looks to be quite desirable. I think the distance is acceptable, you know. Whether that field was part of the heritage of that building, we don't know, and it really doesn't make much difference at this moment in time. But I think there's still a good break there between that development and the listed building.
Thank you. Councillor Purser.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I had a wander down there and had a look around this site and what have you. And while I understand there's the need for the development, there's need for the bungalows, and it's all well planned out around there, there is another side of it from my perspective on that, which we actually had a look at another site some time ago, the fact that a lot of the people who actually live there already are actually quite the elder people, retired people and what have you, and the heavy traffic going through there to actually develop the site could have a detrimental effect to their own properties that are down there. And I think I'm led to believe there's a possibility of a flooding issue there, but I'm concerned for those people who actually live down there, the disturbance they actually have their own living down there at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor French, followed by Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Chairman. I listened to what Councillor Purser has said. What you've just stated really isn't a planning merit. The question I'd like to answer has, as Elizabeth pointed out, policy LP 18, were English heritage involved in any discussions?
I believe that will be a question to officers. Would you like me to ask officers now? Are you happy to?
Yeah, no, through you, Chairman. So English Heritage or Historic England are only consulted on certain applications. So development within the setting of a Grade 2 listed building would not be an application that would be consulted upon.
Thank you.
Councillor Benny.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I mean, this could be a lot worse. We turn this down today, and you could get this come back with it full of houses. I think this is truly as a compromise, and compromise is where we try and be. Compromises never seem to please anybody. But we have got a good fire break there, and we have got a good break for sound. I mean, if this was any other development, it would be 21 metres. You wouldn't be able to build between closer than that. And if this gets refused, this could come back with more and even closer ties to it. I think this is the compromise. I understand what the applicant says, but nobody ever wants anything built near them, do they? And you know, you can always come up with 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't, but in truth, looking at this, I think, you know, look at the bungalows. They have nice bungalows, and you never see them empty. As soon as they're built, they sell, and that proves a need for it. You know, I personally think this is an application worthy of support.
Thank you. I quite agree. I mean, I look at it and think to myself, like I do with most applications, would I want to live there? And actually, yes, in both properties. I don't think, you know, with the bungalows built, you're going to have any overlooking problems. It's not as though we're putting up 5-bedroom houses or anything. Noise-wise, the likelihood is if they're going to be bungalows, they're going to be older people anyway. Likelihood of them having fires and bonfires and fireworks and stuff, I guess, is fairly negligible, but you know, there is always that risk. But in saying that, there's the same risk around all the other properties as well. At the moment, from what I can see, I'm still not 100% mind made up, but at the moment I am leaning more to pass this application. Any further debate? Councillor Senniclough.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that there was a comment made about if we refuse and the future of the site and I think we just have to stick to the application that's in front of us today. I still haven't made my mind up, but I think, you know, we just need to focus on what we think of this application rather than think about what would happen down the road.
Thank you. Any further comments for debate? No? Okay. Thank you, members. Does any officer have any points of clarification?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So I think just to pick up on a few of the issues that sort of members have raised. So in terms of the separation distances, I think some of the distances that have been referenced are sort of amenity standards. So in terms of distances between properties in terms of overlooking, etc. We're not looking at amenity here, we're looking at the setting of the listed building. Within the report, there is the definition of setting that's given by Historic England. And that setting varies from listed building to listed building. So in some instances, you will potentially have new build very close to a listed building because that reflects the historic pattern of development, etc. Here, it's considered that the setting is the open space around that building, and that sort of encroaching into that open space is what's detrimentally impacting upon that setting. Whether that land has been in the ownership of the building, the listed building historically, is not sort of particularly relevant. Land that is in separate ownerships, multiple separate ownerships, can still form part of the setting of a listed building. So that is the pertinent sort of issue. If members are minded to grant the application, I would remind the committee of the legal duty, again set out in the officer report, but within the 1990 Listed Building Act, that essentially local planning authorities, when considering development, should pay special attention to preserving a listed building or its setting. So the lawful duty on the council is to give great weight to preserving the setting of a listed building. If members are minded to grant the application, however, within that context, I would perhaps advise that any reason for doing that needs to be sort of clearly articulated and clearly set out in respect of the public interest sort of benefit or balance that's set out within the MPPF. So there's a sort of a clear decision-making trail almost that you have to go through to ensure that it's a robust and unchallengeable decision. I'm not sure whether there's anything that the legal officer would sort of want to add to that in terms of the duty in law.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Yes, what David just said is correct. That there is a legal duty to pay special, and that's the word they use, special attention, special regard to preserving the setting of a listed building. So if members decide that this proposal can proceed, notwithstanding some degree of harm to that setting, then they must explain whether they think that level of harm is low enough to justify the proposal, or whether there's a countervailing public benefit to overcome the harm that's involved. And just to repeat a point that was raised earlier, that setting is not the same as ownership, so the two are completely separate concepts. So the setting of a building transcends its ownership, and ownership is irrelevant. So the fact that this field is not owned by the same people as owned a listed building has no relevance at all to the test that should be applied. Thank you.
Any further questions to officers? Or to Stephen Eagle? No? Okay. Do I have a proposer to go with officer's recommendation to refuse planning permission? Councillor Senate Clough. Do I have a seconder for this recommendation? No? Okay. Do we still need to go to the vote on this, as we haven't got a seconder?
Can't go to the vote.
We can't. Right. Okay, fine. So that proposal has now failed. So do we have a proposal to go against officer's recommendation? Please raise your hand. Councillor Benny.
Yeah, Chairman. I would propose that we go against officer's recommendation on this one and approve the application. I don't think it does any serious detrimental harm to the setting of the listed building. There is still sufficient space around it not to harm it. It's a very subjective answer, as David has already pointed out. There's no set distances for this. If there were, it would be very clear cut. It depends on each building individually. And we need houses in Fenland. I mean, as councillors, we know what this is costing in terms of emergency accommodation, because we have not got enough houses in this district. We've got people living in bed and breakfast, and they won't move into those houses, but somebody will move out of a small house to move into a bigger house. and that will create homes, because we are desperate. We are so desperate. I know the houses are being built here, but we as a council have a legal responsibility to provide homes for people. And truthfully, we are struggling as a council to do this. So if there is public need, go and ask anybody who lives in bed and breakfast and ask them if there's a need for housing. I feel there is. I feel that the distances between this and the listed building are sufficient that it won't cause harm in terms of noise, no more than the other residents that live near that property. In terms of construction traffic, not material planning consideration. We pass stuff every day where there's building materials go past people's houses. That's not a consideration. And I just feel that, you know, in terms of land usage, this is what this piece of land is for. It's never going to be agricultural. It will be built on at some point, and this scheme does provide a buffer zone between here and that house. So I'm quite comfortable with approving this application, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. Could we just be very clear on the planning reasons, obviously having heard what the legal officer has said, as to why we believe we should go against this?
I think I've already done that, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I've heard what's said. Yeah, I think to characterise what Councillor Benny said, your view is there's no harm to the setting, or if there is some harm, that's counterbalanced by public benefit.
Whenever you build something, it changes the character of the area. Whether that is harm or whether that is benefit is in the eye of the beholder. And truthfully, to this to me does not do sufficient harm to warrant a refusal on this application.
Through you, Chairman, that's the reason that Councillor Benny's given. So I think that's the one in which the committee need to vote.
Thank you. As the proposal is to go against officer's recommendation, and you have provided planning reasons for the proposal, do I have a seconder? Councillor Gerstner. We will now go to the vote. If you support the new proposal, please raise your hand.
5 votes, Chairman.
If you are against the new proposal, please raise your hand.
1 vote, Chairman.
Okay. Conditions to officers, yeah, not too onerous. Do you want to see, Councillor Benny, do you want to see the condition? No? Okay. Okay. The committee has decided to go against officer's recommendation and grant planning. As advised earlier, within my declaration earlier, as the applications are known to me for the next item, I will now take no part in this item in its entirety. I therefore propose that Councillor Benny chairs the agenda. Can I have a seconder? Councillor French, thank you.
Turn me off. Right. I'll now hand over to Tom Donnelly to present the application FYR 250211 PIP application, agenda item number 9. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application seeks permission in principle for the erection of up to 4 dwellings and the formation of an access on land off Eastwood End in Wimblington. The aerial photo and location plan showed the land to be set back from the public highway and well enclosed by soft landscaping features along the northern and western boundary. The site is set behind frontage residential development and is opposite a cluster of agricultural buildings to the east. An indicative site layout plan identifies a tandem form of development extending towards the northern boundary of the site. Again, given the size and shape of the site, it's likely that a technical detail submission would demonstrate a similar layout to this. A plan has been submitted and identifying other applications that have been permitted in the surrounding area of Eastwood End. The agricultural buildings opposite the site have been given prior approval for conversion into residential, with further developments extending away from the frontage of Eastwood End, both to the north and south of the site. Again, we have some photos taken from the internally within the site. So image 1 is taken from the southern part of the site looking towards the northern boundary. Image 2 looking back towards the dwellings that front onto Eastwood End and the access road shown there. Image 3 looking towards the northeastern boundary of the site, again showing some of the agricultural sort of paraphernalia that is present on the site. And image 4 being the agricultural buildings opposite that have the prior approval for conversion to residential. So in determining application for permission in principle, the only matters for consideration are the location, use and amount of development. The site is in a location whereby further residential development does exist, with further development also permitted. The indicative site plan submitted shows that the site is capable of accommodating this quantum of development, and as such it's recommended that permission in principle is granted. Thank you.
That seems to work. Great. Thank you, David. Technical issue there, everybody. Thank you, Tom. We have one speaker on this application. I would like to invite Matthew Hall, the agent, to make his presentation to the committee. Mr. Hall, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. So as Tom, Planning Officer, outlined, this is a PIP application. We're pleased to see it's been recommended for approval. Looking at some of the points that the objectors have raised, I'll pick up on them. They're saying about trees being removed. There's no trees to be removed as part of this application, and all the trees that you saw in the photos and that are about this site aren't even owned by this applicant. They're owned by somebody completely different and related. And I think as Tom has picked up on, it's not in the open countryside. There's various built out and approved residential development abutting this site. And when I visited site on Friday, 23rd of May, the infrastructure, the new footpath that's been approved, isn't proposed, it's being set. And I went there and spoke to 2 local contractors, Rutherford Construction and Savage Developments, and that footpath is being set at the moment, all the way linking in to the bypass. And the map that's on the screen that I submitted, you can see the site in red that we're looking at. The site in yellow just to the north, that's been approved by members for 9 plots. The site in blue to the south, that's built out and was approved by members for 3 plots. The site in green has been built 2 out of 3 plots, that was approved by members. The pink site works will soon commence on that, that was approved by officers and members for 8 dwellings. And there's another site right at the south here that was also approved recently, planning in principle, for 8 plots. So there's character of the area is changing all the time. Could we have the drawing that I submitted, please, the indicative proposed site plan that was on the screen earlier, please? Thank you. So we've submitted an indicative drawing to give members an idea of what might be proposed at the next stage if this application is approved. You can see low density development, which is similar to the other sites at Eastwood End. The report sums the application up very, very well. We had a good service here from the Planning Officer, Tom Donnelly, prompt. Officers are recommending approval of this application. And other applications at Eastwood End have been supported in some instances by officers and members as well. The site is in flood zone 1. There's an existing access here, and we're proposing to widen that and improve that. The applicant does own the house immediately adjacent to the access 1C, so that can be carried out. There's no highways objection or any other technical objections. It abuts residential development, and the officer has recommended approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Does any members have any questions for Mr. Hall? If you have, please raise your hand. Well, Mr. Hall, you got off very lately there this afternoon. Thank you. I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers. If you have, please raise your hand. See no questions coming forward. Thank you, everybody. I would now like to invite members to debate the item in respect of the material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor French.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a good application. We have approved a lot up there, and I think possibly that will be the last lot to complete that whole area. So I will support it.
Thank you, Councillor French. Any other members? Councillor Gersten.
I agree with Councillor French. It's an ongoing building out of the area in total. So I think this is just a principle in planning. So we've got more details to come later on, which can be discussed at a further planning meeting if it comes to the committee. Thank you.
Yeah, I thoroughly agree with you. I mean, this is a PIP application. We don't know what the details of the application will be. We will see those in later applications. I do agree. We passed several in this area, and it just leaves little parcels of land which I'm sure will find its way into the planning system at some point. Right, anybody else got anything else to say, or any part of the debate? No, that's good. I think this is a good, solid application that we've got in front of us. There isn't a great deal to say about it because there isn't a great deal to see. It's only a PIP application which says, is this land suitable for building on, which we will find out in a minute or two whether it is. So thank you, members. Does any officer have any points of clarification on this before we go to a vote or a proposal? Thank you. Right, do I have a proposer to go with the officer's recommendation to grant planning application, grant this planning application? Councillor Gerstner.
Yes, I propose that the committee go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Councillor French. Give her up. We will now go to the vote. If you support the proposal to go with the officer's recommendation, please raise your hand.
That's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And that application has been approved. Thank you all very much.
Well, as Councillor French hasn't waved a cup at us, I guess, can we crack on for another one? Councillor French? Right. Okay. As agreed earlier, item number 10 has been withdrawn. I will therefore now hand over to David Rowan, Development Manager, to present application FYR 250001F, agenda item number 11.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a full application to erect 4 single-storey extensions to flats 3, 12, 13 and 14 at Roman Court in Leverington. Draw members' attention to the update report that's been circulated, and just to note that there is actually an error within the update report. The recommendation is for approval as set out within the main officer report. So the application site is shown in red on the location plan and aerial photo. The site is a housing complex within a predominantly residential area. Access to the site is from Troughton Way, which is sort of running to the south of the building. The northeast corner of the Leverington Conservation Area is located to the south of Troughton Way, adjacent to Roman House, and I think it's number 8, Troughton Way. So it's literally, it's just the sort of the corner that touches Troughton Way. So the existing ground floor plan is shown on screen. There are several sort of entries shown to the building. The application essentially seeks to enclose these and use the newly created space as extra living space for the adjacent flats. And this is shown on the proposed floor plan with the relevant areas sort of highlighted in the red boxes. One main access to the building will be left, which is sort of to the front and centre. Moving on to the elevations, these are we've got the existing elevation drawings shown on the screen now with the south and west elevations, and then the proposed extensions are shown illustrated in red, which unfortunately hasn't particularly come through on the screen, but I think you can, particularly on the lower image, just make out the two sort of reddish areas sort of towards the left hand side and the right hand side of those of that image. As you can probably hopefully make out, the extensions are reflective of the existing materials, the existing sort of form and appearance of the building as well. And then we've got the other elevations here again, you know, the existing and then the proposed, again hopefully with the extension shown in the red, again evident just on that top image, just next to the two-storey, or just the left-hand side of that two-storey element in the middle. Photos of the existing building are shown, giving a sort of a general overview of the sort of character, the form, the appearance of the building. That lower left image does show one of the entrances which would be enclosed, so effectively the flat-roofed element to the right-hand side of the entrance is to be sort of continued across to meet up with that pitched roof and form that extension. To move on to the summary, as part of the application, a number of objections have been raised, several of which have raised sort of issues regarding the potential future use of the building and also referencing its past use and raising, in some instances, concerns about the impacts arising from the use. However, these are not particularly relevant to the current application, which purely seeks permission for the 4 extensions as described previously within my presentation. These extensions are considered to be small scale, in keeping with the building and having no impact upon its appearance, relationship with surrounding properties or on the setting of the nearby conservation area. The recommendation is therefore to grant the application as set out within the officer report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. We have no speakers on this application. I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers. No questions for officers. Thank you, everyone. I would now like to invite members to debate the item in respect to the material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor Benny.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. I thought somebody better start it off. We've got a policy compliant application in front of us. The officers have done a good job on this one. It may be before us today to determine, but I think this application sells itself really, and I don't feel that it needs an awful lot of debate. I think this is a good solid proposal, and I think the officers have done a good job working to get the conclusion that we've got today. If other members are, if they don't want to discuss it for too long, may I suggest that we move to a vote this one fairly quickly, Mr. Chairman, and get this one ticked off the list, because it's no-brainer. We are going to pass this one today.
Thank you, Councillor Benny, and Councillor French has just raised her mug. Okay, anything further for officers?
Just a quick thing, basically really echoing what Councillor Benny said there, really, that you know, we're often told that sheltered housing is actually needed. It's nice and tidy, it's quite nice and neat, it's harming nobody, so yeah, totally in favour. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. Does any officers have any points of clarification? Nope. Okay, so do I have a proposer to go with officer's recommendation to grant planning permission? Councillor French. Do I have a seconder to go with officer's recommendation? Councillor Senate Clough. We will now go to the vote. If you support the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand.
It's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
That decision is to go with officer's recommendation to grant. Thank you. We will now take a break. 10 minutes? Are we happy with 10 minutes? Half past. Right, half past. Okay, I will now hand over to Alan Davies to present application FYR 250072/F, agenda item number 12.
Thank you, Chair. This application proposes a change of use from drinking establishment club to 3 flats and involves the removal of an external staircase to the rear of the building on the west elevation. It's for the building known as the Buffs, which is on Robin Goodfellows Lane, number 5, March, and the reason it's presented to Planning Committee is due to Parish Town Council comments. You'll see on the screen above the location plan on the left-hand side and the aerial plan of the site on the right. The site is outlined in red. The building is on the west side of Robin Goodfellows Lane and is surrounded by residential development. The 3 apartments proposed will form 2 on the ground floor and 1 on the first floor. There'll be a 1-bedroom flat at first floor, 2-bedroom flat at first floor, and 1 bedroom and a 2-bedroom on ground floor. The existing external staircase, which you can't really see on the aerial photo, will be removed. This is a detailed plan of the site. The image on the left is the existing site. The one on the right is the proposed. As you can see, the image on the left demonstrates that there will be 1 car parking space for use of 3 flats, and there will be some external amendments to the building, namely 3 roof lights inserted into the roof pitches. The principle, in respect of the Principle of Development Policy LP6 of the local plan, policy H2 of March Neighbourhood Plan, require the lack of need for the existing community facility, which is the club, to be demonstrated within the application. This would ordinarily be in the form of a 1-year marketing exercise. No exercise has been undertaken, and so the application is considered to be contrary to policy LP6 of the Fenland District Local Plan. The site layout and external design is considered to be acceptable. The site lies in flood zone 1, and due to the proposal involving the reuse of an existing building, the development is exempt from biodiversity net gain requirements. The existing plan shows the location of the external staircase, which is proposed to be removed and considered to be acceptable in terms of the impact upon design and residential amenity. In terms of the proposal's impact upon the amenity of surrounding properties, it is considered that a number of existing windows that would be retained or have glazing reintroduced would not have any greater impact upon the amenity of existing residents than at present. Nevertheless, the applicant has proposed that the windows on the rear elevation, so the west elevation of the building, at first floor level for flat 3, will be obscure glazed for the purposes of privacy. The proposed floor plans and elevations confirm that external appearances considered to be appropriate in this location. The amenity for future occupants for the building itself is considered to be substandard. The reason for this is flat 2 on the ground floor, which is a 2-bedroom flat, would have insufficient space when considered against nationally described space standards. As a result, the proposal is considered unacceptable as a result of the impact on the future amenity of the residents. Just going to run through some photos of the site just to give you a bit more understanding. So photo 1, top left-hand corner, is the existing area which is proposed to be a parking area, which would accommodate 1 car clear of the highway. Highways have been consulted on the proposal. Whilst the proposal should have 3 parking spaces clear of the highway, they have raised no objections to the proposal in terms of highway safety. Photograph 2 shows the existing rear elevation from the neighbouring garden to the west. Photograph 3, so bottom left-hand corner, again shows the elevation from an alternative view from that back garden. And photograph 4 shows a street scene looking north along Robin Goodfellows Lane. Some more photos just to give some context of site. So top left-hand corner, that's the frontage of the building on the left-hand side, looking north along the lane. Photo 6 is looking south. Note on the left-hand side is the nearest residential property. Photo number 7, left-hand corner, is the existing windows on the west elevation, which will have the glazing reintroduced, and the bricks removed. They are the windows that are proposed to be obscure glazed. And finally, image 8 is taken from the existing staircase to be removed, which currently overlooks the garden of that residential property. So, in conclusion, marketing exercise has not been undertaken to ascertain whether there is an interest in retention of this community facility as the existing club. This proposal is therefore considered to be contrary to policy LP6 of the Fenland local plan, which requires a marketing exercise 1 year. Of the 3 proposed flats, only one meets the minimum floor space and built-in storage requirements of the nationally described space standards. It's therefore considered that the proposal as a whole fails to accord with local planning policy, particularly LP2 and LP16 of the Fenland local plan, which seek to achieve and protect the immunity of future residents. Therefore, the proposal is recommended for refusal.
Thank you, Alan. We have one speaker on this application. I would like to invite Matthew Hall, the agent, to make his presentation to the committee. Mr. Hall, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. As highlighted in the report, there already was a previous approval for the conversion of the first floor to a residential flat, which this proposal also includes to do that. This isn't a rural location that we see a lot of these applications come forward. It's in a built-up residential area and would be classed, in our opinion, as a town centre location. When we submitted the application, we submitted a list of pubs and clubs within March, all within white, and there are 14 other drinking establishments, clubs in March, with possibly the largest one, Wetherspoons, within 170 metres of this site. And this business has been closed for 11-12 months. We've reviewed some of the comments of local residents, because obviously we're surrounded by residential properties, as the photos show, right next to people's gardens. Parking, we've just utilised the existing parking. There's a parking space available and we've shown to keep that, and there are no objections from highways. Bin collection, we've shown to keep the existing bin storage. There's no concerns raised. The first floor windows and the ground floor windows, all to the front of the property where there's been concern raised, they're already there. On the rear elevation, which some of the photos show, there's a staircase and a door. We're proposing to remove that, because when you stand on that staircase, and some of the photos the officer showed were very good, you are looking into definitely 3 people's gardens, right into them. Support for the application is a former landlady who lives in Maine, was a landlady for 14 years, and she wrote in and confirmed, as stated in the report, that this was no longer viable to continue as a business and was closed down prior to the applicant purchasing the building. And there are no technical objections from any of the consultees to this application. Picking up on one of the points within the officer's report, it details about space standards. So this is a conversion. It's not a new build, it's a conversion. We're working with the structure that's there. We don't want to extend it. We don't want to put in for any extensions. There's very limited room. We keep the building, the actual basic outside as is. And as the officers kindly pointed out, flat 1 and flat 3 are satisfactory. Flat 2, the officer advises, is below standard. So when we looked at this application, I looked at obviously other applications as you would, and there was another application, 2019, that was recommended for approval and was also supported by members. That's at 13 Norfolk Street, Wisbech. That's new build, 3 flats, new build. Flat 1, 38 metres squared, below standards, 1 bed. Flat 2, 41 metres squared, below standards, that's 2 bed. Flat 3, 46 metres squared, below standards, that's a 2 bed as well. That's a new build. All L areas on this are all in excess of that. In our opinion, because it's not a rural location, we're right in the middle of the town centre and surrounded by residential properties, we believe there's a bit of benefit here to residents as opposed to what's there now. There's an external stair, which the officer's photos showed, that abuts neighbouring amenity, definitely for 3 properties, and you can stand on the stairs and look right into 3 people's gardens. And the same at the top of that staircase, there's an external door, which again, when you stand there, you are looking right into 3 neighbouring gardens. That's proposed to be removed. The idea of removing public house, drinking establishment, to change it to residential, should be less noisy use in this built-up area. The building is not to be extended, and the officer report states it does not have an overbearing impact. It's there as existing. The officer report is very detailed with regards to the openings on all elevations, so it's well set out, and there's no concerns raised by the officers in that regard. And in our opinion, converting this building from a closed drinking establishment residential usage would match in with the character of the area. Is it abuts residential development all round? Thank you.
I would now like to invite members to put questions to Mr Hall. If you would like to ask a question, please can you raise your hand? Councillor French.
Thank you, Chairman. Matthew, can you tell us why it hasn't been advertised for sale?
Sorry, I spoke to the applicant. He's advised me it was on for 6 months before he brought it with Maxi Grounds. We haven't advertised it since. The business has been closed. Didn't think it would be viable to reopen the business. Haven't done a marketing exercise for those reasons, no.
Councillor Gersner.
Thank you. You may be able to do something. When it was trading as an establishment, was the waste in a trade, you know, one of these biffa type trade bins in those days?
Yes, when, because I walk past this site quite a lot, there's I'll call it an industrial size green bin on site, and I think a brown bin as well, that I think they're still there. We'd probably keep those or have separate bins for residents if approved, but it was a commercial bin that's there, and I think it's still there, to be honest, yes.
So now you can have proposal of 3 flats with the prospect of 3 bins each, plus food waste as well?
I think when it was a drinking establishment stroke club, I think they also serve food, so there'd have been food waste then. Here, if approved and for 3 flats, we'd take advice of Fenland's bin people, whether we're going to have separate bins for each flat or have communal bins. Other flats we've done in March over the years, I've seen both. So there's a bin storage point there now, which we're going to keep. There's an area which we're going to keep. Will it be separate bins or large bins, communal bins? I don't know.
But there's the potential for all those bins on certain days of the week being put out onto the pavements?
As the large bins are or have been at present, yes.
Councillor French.
Thank you. I think just a correction for Councillor. I don't think they'll have 3 brown bins because they've got no gardens, so it's garden waste.
Councillor Benny.
Yeah, thank you. Just also, I didn't catch what you said. You said about this had been marketed with Maxi Grounds for 6 months. Was that prior to the applicant buying it, or was it marketed after that for 6 months?
My understanding is it was prior to the applicant purchasing it.
Yeah, if I can just come back, Matthew, do
Councillor
you know,
French.
is it actually still on the market?
No.
Mr Hall, a couple of questions. You say it was a drinking establishment, but it sounds more like a club than it was just a walk-in off the street pub. Did that mean it was a members club and members have sort of like gone elsewhere, or could people walk in off the street?
My understanding is there were some events, I think quiz nights, maybe pool nights, darts, where it was members only. But my understanding is, before it was closed, 12 months, people could just walk in off the street, but there were some instances where it was members only, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Senniclough.
Hello. So, no one's mentioned the floor space apart from yourself. How did I'm interested in how we got to the stage where one of the flats doesn't meet the standard and then another one doesn't have any storage area. Was that just the internal design of the building? You followed that through without changing it drastically?
Yes, I would agree. It's an existing structure. We've tried to work around the existing structure that's there. 2 out of the 3 flats comply, 1 doesn't, because I've tried to work around the structure. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. That's purely a reason, yes.
Can I just clarify that? I believe when we had presentation that it said that it was 2 flats didn't comply. Is that correct, or did I misunderstand that with the slide?
So it's 1 flat doesn't comply in terms of the overall space standards, so that's flat 2. Flat 3, which complies with the overall requirement, doesn't have any built-in storage space. So nationally described space standards have 2 elements: 1, the overall floor space, and 2, the storage. In terms of the weight we would give, we tend to give more weight to the overall floor space. But as I say, technically flat 3 doesn't have built-in storage space, but that could easily be rectified because the floor space for flat 3, which is the first floor flat, is more than sufficient in terms of complying with MDSS in terms of overall space.
Thank you. It was actually a question of Mr. Hall, but fine. Thank you for clarifying that. And number 2, can you get the flat that's in dispute on size? Can you actually give us the square meterage of that, please?
Just over 58 square metres. Flat 2, I think it is flat 2 that's under, 58 square metres, yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions to Mr. Hall? No. Thank you, Mr. Hall. I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers. Councillor Senniclough.
With regard to the flat that doesn't have adequate floor space, what are the sort of legal implications and safety implications of that? Could you speak a little bit more about that? Because I'm unfamiliar with this area.
So in terms of nationally described space standards, there are a requirement to make sure all future residential development has a minimum floor space. It isn't legislation, it's national guidance. So therefore it's incumbent on each local authority to adopt that guidance. Fenland District Council don't have it adopted as a policy, but it's generally used as guidance to determine planning applications to ensure that future occupants of any residential scheme have sufficient amenity. So that's the sort of legal basis behind it. So in terms of fire regulations, building regulations, they're all separate matters to it. This is purely floor space to make sure the occupants of a development such as this have enough floor space.
Councillor Purser.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a small query here to officers, just to clarify in my own mind. As I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, it's not requisite in actual fact. We've been talking earlier on about there's only 1 parking space for the 3 flats. As I understand it, it's actually not requisite to actually supply any parking spaces. Am I correct in thinking that?
So for this scheme, as it's 3 apartments, the actual parking standards are 1.25 parking spaces per dwelling, which would be obviously far more than what's currently provided. However, as part of the application, we consulted Cambridgeshire County Council Highways. They have seen the plans and the 1 parking space they are happy with it. They've raised no objection. In addition, the site is within the town centre, so all amenities and services required are within a walkable distance, plus there's connections to sustainable transport. So on that basis, there's no concerns with the under provision of parking space. So it is is contrary to policy, but there is no objection to it on that basis.
Any further questions for officers? No. Thank you, everyone. I would like to invite members to debate the item in respect of material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor French.
Yeah, just for clarification, it is a town centre location. At the top of the road, there are something like 15 car parking spaces which actually belong to this authority. And then there are 72 car parking spaces behind in Darthill Road. So I don't think if you're entering from Goodfellows Lane, you can actually get in one side of or get in the other. And there's 72 spaces. So I really don't. My concern is the size. When we're not compliant, it's a shame really this application didn't come to us with 2 flats, which would have given amenity space. I still haven't made up my mind, but I'm not sure yet.
Councillor French, if I can come back on that before Councillor Benny. I've just sat here and thought about it. Recently we've passed temporary accommodation or accommodation in Wisbeach, which is containers, and we were given by Mr Hall a measurement of 58 square metres for the flat, the single flat that doesn't quite make the size. However, a shipping container, and I just looked it up, is 14.18, sorry, it's 14.86 metres, so a lot smaller, but we're still putting people in there and giving accommodation. So I wonder where we go with that one. Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Right, 2 aspects here. One is the non-marketing. I accept that there is policy. The duty of this committee is to look at things, and if we feel there is benefit in any way, that we could look round those policies for the greater good. I actually drove past this earlier in the week. I went to Wetherspoons. I love my breakfast. And I stopped and had a look at it. And I also called around there again today to have another look at this building. This building is an absolute mess. It is a blot on the landscape. And I know what David will say, making it look pretty is not a reason to pass it, and I get that. But we've got a building that has stood there. It's been marketed for 6 months and somebody's bought it. I think we should be grateful that anybody wanted to buy this. This is never going to open as a club or a pub. It was a private members club. The Buffs are the Buffaloes, as are the Odd Fellows, as are the Masons, as is Round Table and all. Oh, sorry, no, not your Round Table. No, no anymore. But these are closed private members clubs. And who in their right mind is going to want to buy that and turn that back into a club when you've got a Wetherspoons that offer the cheapest food, maybe not the best, but it fills you up. Yeah. Well, it is. It's, I go there. I can't say it's that bad. You know, you've got Wetherspoons around the corner, and even if somebody took this on, this is never going to work. It's not a commercial enterprise. Anybody who's got a business head could see this is never going to work as a pub. And all you're going to do is take drinkers away from other pubs and make their businesses bad. Now, anyone who's got a business head can see that is where this is. This is not going to be. We've got an ex-commercial premises that is in the middle of a residential area. This is crying out for renovation. I looked at it, I looked at the floor plans. If you put that into two flats, that's never going to be viable. We are going to end up with another building in another market town that sits there until it falls apart. Chatteris has been smartening itself up quite a lot lately. I mean, I look at Mrs. Wool's building, the blue one is what's left of the blue because it's collapsed in the middle. That's been back to committee twice because that application, it's crying out for it, but it's a listed building and people can't afford to do it. And we don't chase the people down to make them do it. And that building is collapsed in the middle. Do the people of March want this building to end up in the same state as that? We have got a positive application in front of us. We've got an application that will bring 3 flats. And as I've already said earlier today, we have got such a shortage of accommodation. We haven't got anywhere to put people when they come to us for accommodation. And yeah, they're small flats. But there's a lot of people that don't want expensive houses to rent. They just want somewhere to live. and this will provide that. So the fact it's not been marketed, the fact that it was on the market for 6 months and March was fortunate enough to find somebody to take this on, I think is a real win-win. It was a private members club, as Chatwit's Working Men's Club is. They have events which are open to other people, but you have to be signed in or you have to join to come. This isn't a walk-in off the street type establishment. I don't feel that the marketing it is policy, but for the good of March, this is crying out for getting this to be developed. We've got a plan on the table here. In terms of floor space, Orange Grove at Wisbeach, 2021. I was on the planning committee and we went on the bus in those days to look at the application. And I looked at that. That was built in the back beer garden of a pub in Wisbeach on a dual carriageway, or that fronted onto a dual carriageway, 3 stories high. That was a new build. And I thought that was one of the worst applications I have ever seen come to this committee. Cramped. Would I want to live there? No, I wouldn't. But that came forward with an officer's recommendation to approve. I do believe Sheila Black was the case officer for it. And because she was the one who certainly presented that to us. Now that had an officer's recommendation to approve, and that was not up to the same standard as this. We have got a guideline here. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's not a number that we have to adhere to. It is a guideline. And I just feel that to not pass this today would be remiss of this committee. And we are missing a golden opportunity to bring a building back into use. And planning is about land usage. And there is the other side of the argument, but that is how I see this. It's an unattractive building at best. And what else do you do with it? If it doesn't, the sums don't add up and get 3 flats in there, that ain't going to happen. Do we wait until it falls down so it becomes a blot on the landscape like Mrs. Woolshop is in Chatteris? I don't want to see that. And that is why I fully understand it needs marketing. This was marketed for 6 months and somebody bought it, but they didn't buy it to be a pub, they bought it to be flats. And that's what this building lends itself to. And I really cannot see how we can turn this down today.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. Councillor French.
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat what Councillor Benny said, just most of it I do agree with. But I think what we need to be looking at also, the benefit to the community on this, by removing that staircase, it's giving 3 individual properties the privacy back. The Buffs has been there for many years. How it ever got an external staircase in the first place, I don't know. But I think this is a benefit to the, the community.
I would agree. I think the benefit to the community also is not having a building which is going to stand empty for a long period of time. We could get squatters, we could get all sorts of things, fire. We've already heard today regarding fire from another person. I think the other thing we need to take into consideration is we have the Georges, that's been empty years, 2.5, 3 years. Well, 7, even, there you go. And obviously that was on the market. Nobody's taken that over. You know, it's not been it's a pub, whereas this has been a private club as well. The likelihood is the members have gone off elsewhere anyway. I don't believe we're actually taking it away from the community. I think the community benefit would be better that it is now flats more than what's there at the present time. Councillor Purser.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to give you a little insight into that, from what's actually now a little bit, not add a little bit, but adds a little bit to it. On the one hand, if this application had been for 2 flats rather than 3, I'd have had no hesitation. But on the other hand, yes, it was a private members club for the Buffaloes and the likes. They had a bit of a falling out with the landlord there, and they've moved to the Braza, and they're quite happy there. Nothing to do with the application itself, just a bit of the history on there. And the people actually, then there's a walk-in pub downstairs, and a private members club upstairs. The people who took it over left it going to a very, very poor state of repair. So I think it probably got a bit beyond the financial thing of actually repairing it as such. So that's why it's actually got as bad as it is now. But I don't think it actually, I think, as I always say, it takes years and years to build up a business, which they obviously not going to be able to do at the moment, and 10 minutes to lose it, which they did. So it's never going to be another business like that again. So I think turning it to flats like that, I prefer to 2 flats rather than 3. I think making it to flats would be a much better viable proposition for it.
Thank you. Councillor Gersner.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Purser on this. I fully accept and agree to turn the building into an amenity for the public, and flats is of benefit to the community. My concern is 3 flats, and I would be much more comfortable with 2 flats. I don't know what the viability of how much he paid for the building or what it's going to cost. Undoubtedly, the applicant will know that himself. It is recommended for refusal on certain, planning grounds. I'm certainly, I would, if it was refused and it came back for 2 flats, I would fully support that. But I'm afraid under its current 3 flat conditions, I can't support the application. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Any further debate? No? Okay. Oh, Councillor Benny.
The only thing I would say, to turn that into 2 flats, they would be bigger flats, but it would not. I look at it. I don't know what they paid for it. I don't know what the sums of it are. But for anybody to do anything with a property, they have got to make money out of it. And if they don't make money, it doesn't happen. And this is one of these. If it doesn't happen, this isn't a planning application that will come back. This is a planning application that will go away, and you will never see it. That building will end up falling down. That will be sold on to somebody else, and it will never happen. And we've got something that's positive. And why turn down something that's positive that does bring a building back into use? We're working within the constraints of what the building is. This isn't a new build where we're building and we've got to hit these, and it is only a guideline for these building standards. You couldn't afford to put an extension on it to bring it up to the standards. It just wouldn't work. It comes down to money. As much as that isn't a material planning consideration, do we want another blot on the landscape in March? That is what we're going to end up with if this doesn't get approved today. And I don't see anything negative about passing this. There's a need for housing, and there is a need to bring these kind of buildings back into use. I've watched Chatteris over the time I've been a councillor, and there's a lot of buildings being done up. And if you don't, especially, listed buildings are even worse because of the cost of doing them. But this one's not. But if the sums don't add up, it just doesn't happen. And I just look at this, and this is a golden opportunity for March. And if this gets turned down, March will suffer because of this.
I have to say, just round the corner is Collingwood, and it's scruffy. We've just spent £8+ million in the centre of March. You drive into the centre of March, you come up to the roundabout, and all you're faced with, right in front of you, is a dilapidated building that is just rack and ruin, and it lets down March now and what's been spent on it. It's nice to see. I understand the pub being bought, and the George's being bought, and hopefully that will come back and that will tidy it up. This will just become, as you say, another blot on the landscape, as it is already, if something's not done with it very, very soon. And we are short of houses. We are short of starter places. We have the same in Maney. We need, places where youngsters can go and live and afford to live. And obviously, okay, we've got three flats there. It's added bonus. Anything further in debate? Go on, Councillor Clough.
I just want to say I was umming and ahhing over this application because of the floor space in that flat. But, we have to look at the application in front of us. We have to make a judgment call. And I think the good far outweighs the harm in relation to this application when you consider all the points that have already been discussed. So I will support this application.
Thank you. Any further comments? No? Okay. Does anybody have any points of clarification? Sorry, does anybody have any points of clarification for officers?
Your Chairman, is that for officers to clarify,
Yeah,
or is
sorry,
that
that's
for
sorry.
us to be asked any questions? Thank you. Through Chairman, I think just to pick up on some of the general issues that have been sort of discussed. Planning is an evidential process, and part of the problem with this application from an officer's perspective is that the lack of evidence that's been provided to us. We've heard today that the building has been marketed, nothing's been submitted as part of the application. we've heard members talk about the viability of 2 flats versus 3 flats. We've had no information submitted. So to some extent, as officers, we're kind of working a little bit blind, and to a degree as a committee you are as well. Speculation about the condition of the building and what may or may not happen to it in the future is not particularly material to the determination of the application. The building's only been vacant for a year. Certainly it's not from my trips up and down Robin Goodfellows Lane in any kind of structural disrepair, particularly. And indeed, if we were potentially given the evidence that policy requires and that would justify maybe a lessening of the space standards, then ultimately that might be a different recommendation from officers. Just to pick up on some of the other issues in terms of comparisons being made to other sites, as with all these things, it's very much a case-by-case basis. So we've heard about Orange Grove from 2019. That was a vacant site within a conservation area. So I think weight was given to sort of effectively developing what was a bit of a blot on the landscape within the conservation area. I think we've also heard about, the size that homeless accommodation is that was permitted in Wisbech. Ultimately, there were very much units that were there for people whose only option was to sort of live on the streets, interim accommodation, as opposed to potentially longer term accommodation that we've got here. So I think there are distinct differences between this application and some of those other cases that are being cited. And I will reiterate the point, effectively, we've got no evidence to support a lot of the issues that are being raised by members as justification for granting the application. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Benny.
I fully understand where you are, David. You're an officer. Your Bible is the local plan and the national plan. But equally, our job is to look at the proposal overall and to look at community benefit in parts of this, which is the softer side of planning, that you can't. I fully understand how you have reached the decision that you've reached with this. If I was sitting in your shoes, I would be the same. But as a councillor who has to go and face the public, and when we say to them, or when they come and say to us, I watched that planning meeting the other day, whatever were you doing? And it's, we can say, well, it's policy, and it is. But there is also common sense, and there is compassion within planning. And this is the compassion that we save this building from falling into disrepair, and we save it being a blot on the landscape. So as much as I fully understand how you've reached your decision, David, and I've got every respect for you as an officer and for the reason that you came to that decision, as a member, I'm afraid I have to disagree with the end result, but we'll find out in a few minutes. But this is not in any way a slur on the work you've done, and I fully understand how you reached the decision you did. So just like to say that.
Thank you. Okay. I now propose to go to the vote. Do I have a proposer to go with officer's recommendation to refuse planning permission? Councillor Gerstner. Do I have a seconder for this recommendation? Okay, so that has not failed. We just haven't got a seconder, so we now move on. Can I ask for a different proposal? Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I propose that we go against officer's recommendation and approve this application. I've spoken quite at length about my reasons why I feel that it should go this way. It's because this is saving a problem for later on for the people of March. The community benefit is it's bringing the building back into use for much needed housing that we need. The space issue is only a guideline, and we have passed other applications that have smaller footprints than these. And I'll go back to the same thing. Ask someone who's living in a bed and breakfast if they'd be pleased to live here, they would jump at the chance. We need to provide housing. That's another duty of a council. In terms of the marketing, this was on the market for 6 months. I think that it was fortunate that somebody came along within 6 months and bought this. This will never ever be a pub again or a club. It just isn't going to work. Pubs are closing all over the country. They are all struggling, especially since COVID. And the cost of putting a business into that building, it just ain't going to happen. So we should bear that in mind and take that, that consideration into this when we look at this. And I really feel that this is an opportunity for March to have a building that's going to be brought back into some good use rather than stand there empty for years.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. As the proposal is against officer's recommendation, you need to provide your planning reasons, which you have done so. Do I have a seconder for this proposal? Councillor Senate-Clough. We will now go to the vote. If you support the new proposal, please raise your hand.
That's 5 votes, Chairman.
If you're against the new proposal, please raise your hand.
Application is approved, Chairman.
Thank you. With conditions to officers. I will now hand over to Alan Davies to present application FYR 250156-F, agenda item number 13.
Thank you, Chair. This proposal is for one self-build, custom-build dwelling and the erection of a storage shed involving the demolition of the existing shed and stable at Sharman Fabrications, Gall Farm, Gall Road, March. On the screen is the location plan on the left-hand side and the area photo on the right. You can see the site is marked within red line. The development or proposed development is located to the southwest of the junction of the A141, Isle of Ely Way and Gall Road, which is to the west of March. The site features a corrugated metal workshop building, stables, paddock and gravel parking area. There is an existing gated access off Gall Road leading to the parking and turning area. The site is situated within flood zone 3. Given that the site is clearly outside the built-up settlement of March, it is considered to be an elsewhere location when applying the criteria and policy LP12 of the local plan. The application has failed to justify why an additional dwelling would be required to support the business needs of the existing business. Accordingly, the submission largely fails to address the requirements of policy LP12 Part D of the local plan in terms of a functional need for a dwelling on the site, and it is not considered that an additional dwelling would be necessary. Therefore, the principle of development on this site for a new dwelling is not considered to be acceptable or accord with the Fenland local plan. The proposed site layout is on the screen above, and it shows the location of the new shed, which is south of the existing shed on site. The plan demonstrates the dwelling would be an isolated home in the countryside, and paragraph 84A of the NPPF states that development of isolated homes in the countryside should be avoided unless there is an essential need for a rural worker to live permanently at or near the place of work in the countryside. The application is submitted to demonstrate that there is an essential need for a rural worker to live permanently on site, and thus the application is considered to be contrary to paragraph 84 of the National Plan and Policy Framework. In addition, the applicant has submitted this proposal as a self-build. Currently, Fenland District Council can demonstrate a significant supply of custom and self-build, and therefore very little weight can be given to this proposal as a custom and self-build proposal. The plan on the screen is the proposed elevations, and the design is not considered to be objectionable in its own right. However, given that it would be within the open countryside in an isolated location, it would create an out-of-character development, which would detract from the relationship between the site and its rural and undeveloped surroundings. The proposed development would undermine this relationship by the consolidation of existing sporadic and loose-knit built form notable in this area, and would therefore be contrary to policy LP16 of the Fenland local plan. The slide above shows the proposed elevations of the shed. In terms of the proposed shed, it's not considered to be out of character, given that this is very similar in design, scale, mass to the existing shed on site. This plan demonstrates the proposed floor plan. As stated previously, the application site is located within flood zone 3. Policy LP14 and the Fenland local plan requires new development to be the subject of a sequential test, which aims to direct new development to the areas of lowest risk of flooding. It's concluded that there is no site-specific need for the dwelling on site, and therefore the sequential test needs to be applied. It's considered that applying the sequential test across the whole of the district would result in finding sites at lower risk of flooding which are capable of accommodating a single dwelling. Therefore, the proposal is also deemed to have failed the sequential test. The above slide demonstrates the proposed roof plans of the shed. Again, as previously stated, there's no concerns in terms of the design, scale, mass of the proposed shed. That will be located to the south of the existing. In terms of residential amenity, as there are no immediate neighbours, there will be no detrimental impact on existing residential amenity. Access to the site and parking are considered to be acceptable, as is ecology and biodiversity net gain. The above slide shows the proposed street scene, existing and proposed, and as can be seen, demonstrates that it will result in an isolated development in the open countryside. Finally, just some photos from the site. Main thing to point out is bottom left-hand corner. That's the directly in front of that would be the location for the dwelling. The other three photos show the existing shed on site. So, in conclusion, this application seeks to erect a self-build custom dwelling and storage shed. Limited justification has been provided to the functional need for the dwelling on site, and the business use does not fall within the development criteria listed under policy LP3 of the local plan. Therefore, an exception cannot be made for a rural dwelling and rural workers' dwelling. A further permanent dwelling in this predominantly rural location is considered unjustified and would significantly detract from and undermine the rural character of this part of the district. The application is not accompanied by a sequential test exploring availability of alternative sites at lower flood risk. Therefore, the proposal is recommended for refusal.
Thank you, Alan. We have one speaker on this application. I would like to invite Matthew Hall, the agent, to make his presentation to the committee. Mr. Hall, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. So the proposal at this site is obviously a shed to expand the existing business and an occupational on-site dwelling, not a separate residential dwelling, a dwelling tied to the existing business. So the business has been at this location since 2004. Originally, the business was located off Gall Road at a Fenland District Council depot, which was sold, and the business relocated to this site. It's a fabrication business that makes and repairs various steelwork products, predominantly play equipment, gates and structural steelwork. The business also works with local businesses to carry out repairs to vans, lorries and trailers. Out of hours working takes place particularly on HGV repairs and trailers, which can often be an emergency repair at any time. The work is generally UK based for the play equipment and structural steelwork and gates, with the occasional component sent abroad. And the HGV and trailer repair work is generally all local work for local businesses. This application for an occupational dwelling tied to the existing business, not a separate residential dwelling. The business has been established here since 2004, and the business is to remain at this location as it's established here, rather than move the entire business, which is why we haven't looked at other sites. There are no technical objections to this application, there are no local objections, and there's support from local businesses to this application, Fenview Motors, Rutherford Construction, Griffin Roses. Could we have the map on the screen I submitted, please? Thank you. So you can see the red dot is the site we're looking at, right on the edge of the bypass. The yellow dot to the south, that was a dwelling that we did in 2013 that was in conjunction with the existing HGV repair business in flood zone 3. That's been built out and sits nicely in the landscape. The blue dot to the north, that was given approval in 2020 by the planning committee for a dwelling, and the agent there, not myself, advised during the meeting that was for persons to live on site in conjunction with the existing business. That was in flood zone 3. And the pink dot, just to the south of this, that was given approval only last year for an occupational dwelling in conjunction with the existing Rose business. That was given approval by officers. And you can see all of these areas I've highlighted are on the fringes of the bypass. There are no objections to this application, both technical or from members of the public. It's been here since 2004, this business, and they wish to expand further with the shed, as the officer has highlighted, and allow a person to live on site, an occupational dwelling rather than off-site, to allow an actual office to be on site. The dwelling, in our opinion, will help secure the business, allowing persons to live on site, out of hours working and emergency call-outs, which is carried out at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite members to put questions to Mr Hall. If you would like to ask a question, please could you raise your hand? Councillor Clough.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Mr Hall, you said the business has been there for 21 years. Why the need now to build?
There's 3 people in the working for the business, all family members. One of the gentleman who started it, Mr George Sharman, is early 70s. He's obviously thinking of the future, so he would like one of his sons to live on site. Planning for the future. George often goes out late at night for call-outs, and I suppose he doesn't want to anymore, being early 70s. So it's planning for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gerstner.
Just to confirm then, so one of the 3, or it said 2 here in the paperwork here, would probably live in that dwelling if it was granted, yes?
Definitely, yes. Not a separate residential dwelling. Definitely one of the sons, yes. Who's employed at the moment in the business, yes. Thank you.
No further questions? Okay. I would like... Thank you, Mr Hall. I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers. Silence. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I would now like to invite members to debate the item in respect of the material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor Clough.
Well, this is another difficult one where I'm undecided as yet. I can see the need for one of the family members to live on the site. I like to think that we support local businesses. Throughout Fenland, we see properties that are dotted around, not around other properties. And but at the same time, I have questions around the idea of this self-build, custom design, and whether or not there are any restrictions on that. So that concerns me a bit. As I say, I'm undecided at the moment, so I'll listen to other members.
Thank you. Councillor Benny.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I would like to have seen some justification. We have seen in the past where we've had something that supports the application to say there is a need on site. And that certainly there is a business. There's one workshop there. If there's another workshop coming, that means there is going to be more work. We have certainly passed workplace homes for people that are out in the countryside, and this is just the other side of the bypass of March, but we usually do it on the grounds of rural security, which is a very valid reason for anybody who's got a business. I mean, you get one break in and it can finish it. So I certainly do, and when Councillor Connor's sitting in that chair, he's had a business that gets robbed quite regularly, and the need for having somebody on site is there. As a self-build, is it a self-build? Ought to be tied really in some way to the business. We're putting a workshop shed up, but equally we've had other applications. We had a wood yard at Wisbech St Mary's, and we never had any justification for that. We just took it as face value. I mean, obviously the business was there because me and Councillor French went and had a look at it, didn't we? So, there is need. There is a business. Councillor French knows March rather well. She's lived here for a year or two. I don't know these people from anybody. If Councillor French knew of these people and whether they are you know, an honest kind of, not honest, that's not the right word, you know, a genuine March business that is growing, then, and they are there and there are sons, but there's nothing to support that. That is the thing with this application. I would be happy to support this if that information was given to us so we could say so, but I'd be interested to know what Councillor French has to say on the matter. I'm sure she'll say something.
Councillor French.
Thank you. Yeah, excuse me. I won't repeat what Councillor Benny has said. Yes, this is a genuine business. It has been going for, well, 21 years. I had forgotten how long. Yeah, I haven't seen the justification sequential test. I'm two minds on this. I would like more information. I'd be happy to have this application deferred for further information.
Thank you. I have to say, I'm with you on that. I think a deferral would probably be the way I would like to see this go. I don't think we've got enough information at present time to make that decision. However, be interested in what everybody else has to say. Councillor Purser.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, it was said earlier on that this is out of character development. The rest of I completely and utterly disagree with that. I think it's actually very much within character. I know Paul and Gary, although I haven't seen them for many, many years, hence I didn't sort of feel I need to declare on that. They're both very, very hard-working guys. The father set them up a business there, and they're working really, really hard on it. They work all hours God sends on it, and they do. I've seen some of the work they do, and they do a really, really good job on all the stuff they do. Having said that, we in the past have actually passed applications on Crossroads, Whittlesea Road, Maney, and all the likes for security, and when you're out in the wilds a little bit like that, and those not actually out in the wilds but still off the beaten track a little bit, the possibility of a break-in at night time where nobody knows about it till the next day is very, very probable. Say we had one down Whittlesea Road where it was a wood yard, and they said, well, what's the security problem down there? So the guy actually had a house built down next to his yard, which prevented the security problem. I think basically, I mean, they say exceptions, you know, being made. I think having a place like that on the site is, I use the word essential, it's probably a bit too strong, but very, very important to do that. And I fully support this application.
Thank you. What I would just like to add to that is obviously security for one. We did also pass just down that lane a bit further. It was a flying club or that was New Road. That was at. And there was also mention of livestock as well. Obviously, if there's a horse arena, I believe there's livestock of some description on site as well. Councillor Gerser.
Thank you. I think it's been covered. I think one of the elements is consistency. We've had several applications similar to this, and I think it's well been covered here. Yes, more meat on the application may help, but I think in this particular case, they put a strong enough case. Thank you.
Okay, any further? Councillor Benny.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know this business. I don't know the people. I don't know anything. So I really can't comment. But if this is a genuine application, if you're going to put double the size shed up, there is going to be a need for that, and that will attract more thievery, more stuff disappearing, because it will be more interesting. So having somewhere on site, very much I agree with that. The sequential test, you know, his business is there. You ain't going to move that around for this. This isn't just an application. This is an application with need. Personally, I think really a deferment on this one to get something back to the committee to prove that this is a business would be a fair way to go. I think there's sympathy for this around the committee, but just because it's an application, this isn't a self-build. This is a workplace home that really should have justification. I don't see anything here, but I think a deferment to get that information would be a good course or a good way forward, Mr. Chairman.
So, Councillor Benny, are you proposing a deferment?
Unless anybody's got any burning desire to add anything else to it, then I would go for a propose that we have a deferment on this to get some information back to the committee so we can look at it and decide whether this is a proper business. We have past other applications, I mean, the Woodyard at Wisbech St Mary's is one of the ones that springs to mind. We never need financial information for that one. I dare if I sat here long enough, I could think of some others. So, you know, but it would just be, it would give the committee a sort of a bit of assurance that what we're doing is the right thing, because there is nothing here to support that at the moment.
Okay, I'll bring in Councillor French and then I'll go to officers.
Yeah, just to further information for Councillor Benny, there is no such thing as a policy of workplace homes. That was removed in 2009, as you are well aware of many.
I am indeed, we live in one. I will now go to officers.
Thank you, Chairman, through you. Obviously listening to the debate, quite interesting that I think the committee seems to have made a stronger case for the application than the actual applicant does. Because reading through the design and access statements, there's absolutely no mention of the issue of security. It's not even put forward as a sort of as a case, let alone any evidence to support that. Clearly, the issue of whether the applicants are hard-working guys, whether it's a genuine business or not material planning consideration. We've got no real information within the application that sets out why a dwelling is required on site, why somebody has to live on site, why it's essential that somebody lives on site, how the building has operated for 20 years, which I think was a point that Councillor Senate-Clough made earlier, and why a dwelling is now needed. No information at all about that. We've got no information at all about the financial viability of the business. So again, we sort of sat here as officers and indeed as a committee, effectively making a decision almost blind in terms of the information that we've got. I appreciate the committee may have made similar decisions elsewhere, but I would perhaps say two wrongs don't necessarily make a right. And clearly there are also other examples of dwellings that have been granted tied to businesses, but again, it's very much a case-by-case basis, given that the whole sort of ethos behind this sort of area of planning is to respond to the actual needs of the specific business and the specific case in front of us. And as I say, with this application, there really is very, very limited information on which to actually base any kind of positive decision, I would suggest. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. Councillor French.
I was just going to say, well said, David. I am surprised at its lack of information. And if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we approved an application which was up for refusal for Mr. I can't remember, David or whatever, Michael Deptford. And fortunately, he was here and he could actually answer the questions. It's just a shame, really, we don't have an applicant here that could answer the questions. So I still would like to see a deferment.
Councillor Benny.
In that case, Mr. Chairman, save a lot more debate, I propose that we defer this application to get more information on the viability, but the how the business operates and some kind of need for this.
Can we be clear on what we're asking for from the agent before, and if we agree for a deferment?
I would like to see something to show that there is actually a viable business there, that the people who they say are working there are working there. I've got no reason to doubt it, but if it was in front of me, then that would give assurance there. And to see how they intend to grow their business. And if it is growing, I mean, they've put a lot of money into building a shed. That must be for some purpose. I dare say he's not buying a big lawnmower to cut his grass to store in there. So if there must be a business plan there somewhere, and if that kind of information was here, in terms of security, I certainly feel that this application could be supported. I agree with Councillor Purser. This is not a blot on the landscape. I mean, this piece of land was going to have a college on it several years ago. I mean, there's plenty of building going on there, and this man owns this. And the need for a sequential test. This is not. We're not building a house. We're building a business here. And if that's part of the need of the business, then that's good enough for me. But I would like to see some kind of information around the business in terms of employers and a business plan to show that they are actually going to extend the business with extra shed, and therefore if there's more lorry movements coming in and out, if they go out and fix things, this does not warrant this business, if that is how that business operates, it needs to respond to its customers quickly, which living on the premises would do, and also you wouldn't want to put that next to a residential house or in the middle of a housing estate. So it is in the right place if the criteria around this is right. I'd rather fancy it is, but I've got no proof of that in front of me, and I would like to see that before we have make a decision on it.
Thank you. I'll bring Councillor French in after. If I just bring David in first, and then...
If I may just respond to Councillor Benny's sort of points. I think one thing just to add in, I think it is mentioned in the officer report. However, an economy statement has been submitted as part of the application, which does indicate there will be no additional jobs created as part of the proposal. So just to sort of throw that into the sort of mix. In terms of the issue of deferral, clearly it's a decision for the committee to make, and you know it's within your gift to go down that route if you so choose. However, I think this is not the first time that kind of we've been sat here making decisions on applications which are lacking in information. Ultimately, it's the responsibility of the agent applicant to provide that information, and I'm a little bit concerned that the committee effectively gives applications that are lacking in information very much a sort of second bite of the cherry, rather than perhaps incentivising people to try and get it right first time with the information. The application comes to committee, it then gets deferred. There doesn't seem a lot of incentive there for, as I say, applicants, agents to get things right first time, and to actually provide us with applications that are fully informed from day one, and which make everybody's life a little bit easier in terms of determining those applications. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll bring in Councillor French and then Councillor Benny.
Thank you. Yeah, one thing that I did notice, which I forgot to ask, there's several dikes and ditches around there, and I did attend March 3rd last week, which is the drainage board for this area, because we have discovered we have not adhered to a planning application building something 9 metres away, and the build has got to be removed. So I am concerned, especially on that side. I listened to what David has said. We as a committee are asking for additional information. The information supplied, obviously, it's not an incomplete application. It's just we, the committee, want more information, and we're justified to defer it if we want.
Councillor Benny.
Yeah, I mean, putting it back to about the agent, we get. It would be very difficult for every applicant to put every single possibility of information, and all this information costs money, and sometimes officers pass stuff, and we don't even need the paperwork that they're paying for, or the applicant is paying for. So, as much as we want complete applications, we get applications that come in with approval on them that are incomplete because the information is not there. How much information does an applicant have to pay for to satisfy every single tick of the box? And maybe a little bit of feedback from the agents, from the planning office to the agents about what is needed before we get to this stage could alleviate some of that. But I know we're busy on both sides, and I know it is, but I think that there's two sides to that, and I think sometimes you just end up where you end up, and we are where we are with this one, and we've asked for specific information to come back to prove there is a business here. You know, we haven't turned around, which we quite legitimately could say, yeah, absolutely believe it, and we'll approve this today, or we'll have a proposal, and if it gets approved, push this through. I think what we're asking for is reasonable. So I think there's two sides to this here. But if information is forthcoming, I think that this could be an application that we could support, but we will see.
Thank you, Councillor Benny. I have to say, I'm literally at 50-50 on this. And I think the extra information may sway me either way. And I think that is the information that we require. If I had to make a decision today, I don't know which way I would go on this at this present time. Maybe things will change in the next few minutes, but I think with that extra information in front of us that we've requested, we could make a proper decision. David, did you want to come back on that?
Thank you, through Chairman. As indicated earlier, it's clearly within the committee's gift to go down the deferral route if you so choose. Without wishing to labour the point, just to, I suppose, come back on the issue that Councillor Benny's raised. Planning policy is quite clear on the kind of tests that are needed to be undertaken to demonstrate that such a dwelling is acceptable. That's set out in both the local plan and also in the MPPF, and has been for some considerable time. Without wishing to focus on Mr Hall, unfortunately this is his application, but it could also apply to a number of other local agents. Ultimately, this is not a new issue or a new area of sort of legislation. The relevant sort of tests have been established for quite some time, and I think because of that, it really is incumbent upon agents and their applicants to submit the relevant information. As I say, we've got an absolute paucity of information here that doesn't tick any of the necessary policy boxes, and as I say, I don't wish to labour the point, but I think it does need sort of pointing out.
Thank you, David. Councillor Benny.
We have a proposal on the table, Mr Chairman.
Okay, so Councillor Benny has proposed that we defer this application for further information. So all those in, can I have a seconder for that? Sorry, Councillor French. All those in favour? Okay, that application has been deferred. I'll now hand over to Alan Davis to present linked application FYR 25-0260F and FYR 25-0261LB, agenda item number 14.
Thank you, Chair. This item concerns two separate applications which are linked: a householder application for a rear extension and a associated listed building consent application covering the extension and internal building works plus the provision of an SRC pump and installation of new gates. This is for property at 7 West Park Street, Chatteris, and is presented to committee due to the number of representations contrary to officer recommendation. The slide on the screen shows the location plan and the aerial photo. The site is an existing dwelling located on the east side of West Park Street, Chatteris, and the dwelling is Grade 2 listed. Applications FYR 24-1008 and FYR 1009 were refused in March 2025 for a similar development to the one proposed under this application, or these applications, sorry. Policy LP18 of the Fenland local plan seeks to protect and enhance heritage assets. The principles of development is supported subject to the significance of and the likely impacts upon the heritage assets. The plan above is the proposed site plan. As you can see, the existing dwelling is to the south with the proposed extension to the north to the rear garden. The application includes both external and internal works of the listed building, and we have received comments from the Conservation Officer relating to the impact on the listed building. Objections have been raised to the position of the proposed extension and the resultant loss of original walling and the loss of historic fabric of the building, in addition to the loss of the scullery pantry, which is well preserved. The loss of the historic fabric proposed is considered to result in less than substantial harm. When considered on the scale of harm to a listed building and its significance, less than substantial is in effect medium on the spectrum of harm. Paragraph 215 of the National Planning Policy Framework states that where a development proposal will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, that harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including, where appropriate, securing its optimum viable use. Whilst it's noted that the extension proposed would modernise the property and allow for more natural daylight into the kitchen area, this is not considered to be a significant public benefit that outweighs the loss of historic fabric, and therefore would not be considered to be acceptable. The plans here are the proposed elevation. As you can see, the front of the dwelling, then the side elevations with the proposed extension, which is a flat roof with a roof lantern and bifold doors. The east elevation, which is the rear elevation, demonstrates that the proposal would be on the right-hand side of the rear elevation. Note that Conservation Officer's comments identify that the left-hand side of the rear elevation has been amended over the years and has lost some of its historic fabric as a result. Therefore, the Conservation Officer comments are that the proposed extension would be preferable to be located on the left-hand side of the building, as it would cause less harm to the historic significance. These are the proposed ground floor plans and proposed first floor plans. As you can see, again, the flat roof, single story extension, plus the roof lantern. In terms of the concerns, they are primarily turning the kitchen into utility, and the historic scullery into the kitchen will result in the loss of the historic scullery, which is well preserved. The proposed windows, so they are proposing to change the windows on the rear elevation to slim light double glazing. The product proposed isn't the optimum in terms of ensuring the historic fabric is retained. And then finally, the historic windows are in a serviceable condition, so it could be retained with additional maintenance and works to them. The above slide shows the proposed street scene. As noted, looking directly onto the building, the proposed extension isn't visible from the street scene. However, moving left down the road, there are views towards the proposed extension. It will be visible from the conservation area and will have an impact, although the impact on the conservation area is considered to be less harmful than that on the significance of the listed building itself. In terms of residential amenity, the proposal will not result in a loss of light or privacy for neighbouring residents. There will be no additional bedrooms and therefore nothing to address in respect of parking regarding policy LP15 in the local plan. The site is in flood zone 1, and so flooding is not considered to be a concern, and the proposal is also exempt from biodiversity net gain as it is a householder application and listed building consent. Just to give you some context of site, photos 1 and 2 are of the building from the road. Photos 3 and 4 show the rear elevation with the existing conservatory, which is to be demolished and replaced by the proposed extension. So in summary, these applications seek plan permission and listed building consent for the erection of a single story rear extension, demolition of the conservatory, installation of new gates, an air source heat pump, and replacement of existing sash windows with new timber sash windows. These applications are resubmission of a previously refused application with amendments including reducing the opening in the kitchen, retention of the existing hallway door. The current submission is considered to result in the loss of historic fabric and considered to result in less than substantial harm. Modernisation of the property and additional daylight in the kitchen do not represent a significant public benefit that would result in such a loss being considered acceptable, and therefore the proposals are recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have one speaker on this application. I would like to invite Duncan and Sarah Worsley, the applicants, to make their presentation to the committee. As there are two applications, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members and officers. These applications are similar to previous applications made in 2024, which were due to be taken to the Planning Committee. Sadly, a mix-up at Fenland Council meant that the committee was not notified in time, and subsequently the 2024 applications were declined in March of this year. A bit of background: in July last year, we met on site with Sam Falco, the Conservation Officer. The principles of the extension were discussed, as well as reviewing the historic fabric of the house, and we discussed various options, with an extension on the left-hand side being discarded due to the requirements to leave a 1 metre gap space between our neighbour's extension and a lack of natural light in that area. At that time, everyone's preferred option is what we have submitted on the right-hand side of the house. The current applications include more historic fabric being retained, such as keeping the existing door in its current site and a smaller opening created into the new kitchen area. There are no local objections to the scheme from people who live close to the proposed extension and alterations, and the Chatteris Town Council support the proposal. Slide 2 shows the scullery, and we note the Conservation Officer's report dated 25th of April 2025 says this room hasn't had a 20th century makeover. Yet the ground floor shower room was approved by the Fenland District Council, and 2/3 of the space was converted into a ground floor shower room back in 2016, and the work was completed. The remains of the scullery are no longer fit for purpose, and it is a damp, dark space accessed via the shower room. It is currently not being used to the full benefit of the house due to its distance from the current kitchen. It has a modern partition wall splitting the existing sash window, so the window into the scullery bathroom cannot open. Slide 3 shows the front elevation and that the extension will not be seen from the street front on. Slide 4 shows the rear elevation, a mismatch of materials which has a mixture of brickwork, plastic casement windows and a poorly constructed conservatory. All of these things will be significantly improved by the proposed extension, with the brickwork being repaired, windows replaced with in-keeping sash timber windows and the conservatory being removed. Slide 5 shows the proximity of our neighbour's extension at 9 West Park Street. This was approved in May 2022. With the position of existing services and making better use of the existing floor plan, the proposed extension works better on the right-hand side of the rear elevation. Slide 6 is a street sketch view, which shows how the proposed extension will be viewed when walking south along West Park Street. With existing fencing and vegetation to the front of 5 West Park Street, the impact will be minimal, and views of the rear garage block and the old dovecote still being maintained. The proposed extension is flat roofed so that the existing stained glass window at the stair landing at the rear of the house can be retained. A simple coping stone to the parapet running around the extension offers a sympathetic detail, with brickwork chosen to match the existing brickwork on the main dwelling. A sympathetic roof lantern provides additional light into the new space. The proposed extension and alterations will be sympathetic to the house and will greatly improve the existing dwelling, providing accommodation fit for a modern family. It offers a positive addition to the listed building, which will be a public benefit when viewed from West Park Street. Section 10 of the officer report to this committee even stated that the single-storey extension results in lesser substantial harm to the significance of the listed building and its setting. Yes, there is a small section of the existing fabric being removed. However, this must be viewed against the wider benefit of adapting the house to modern living standards, and we do not believe that this has a significant detrimental impact on the listed building. We would ask members to look at the benefits of the scheme that the scheme can provide and the largely supporting nature of the planning officer's comments and go against the Conservation Officer's recommendations. The scheme is a sustainable development, and according with the development plan as a whole, we would ask members to support the recommendation to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to invite members to put questions to Mr. and Mrs. Wolsey. If you would like to ask a question, please can you raise your hand and indicate to who you would like the answer to the question. Shall I start? Okay. So, sorry, in your presentation, you mentioned everyone was in agreement. Was that including the historic officer as well?
Yes, it was.
It was at the time.
At the time, it
So,
was.
what do you believe has changed his mind or her mind since?
I would guess, given we haven't actually had any interaction with him, everything's just been in the dark. I would guess that he has seen the, maybe if you go back to that slide 5, I think is the next door neighbour's extension, which is out of keeping somewhat, and I think he wants us to hide it. That's the only reason I can think he would say that that he would change his mind.
Okay, thank you. Also, the other question regarding the scullery, obviously, what will you do? Is it a case of it will just be ripped out and lost, or have you got plans to reuse it?
No, so the idea is that we would, so the current scullery, the current, the remains of the scullery, so the floor in the shower room is above the scullery floor, so it'd be keeping that floor, just be hidden. It will be turned into, the idea is we're going to turn it into a kitchen. We did propose that we could perhaps have a drop down in the kitchen to keep it at the time, but our proposal is to use the brickworks that we'd be taking out and put them up there. We would we'd fix the scarring as best as possible and take out the modern PVC windows and put in wooden sash windows. So we would be restoring that side of the house while perhaps doing a small bit of damage to the other side.
Thank you. Councillor Benny.
Good afternoon. Just so I can get a bit of a feel for how you are. I know this house. I knew Jeff that lived there. Some people stumble into buying listed buildings. They buy things and they don't know what they've bought. Now, generally, there is also people that buy listed buildings because they like listed buildings and they know it's going to cost a fortune to do, but they buy them anyway and they're quite happy to put their money in it and they appreciate the value of having a listed building or historic value to it. Now, from what you're saying about changing the brickwork in the back, you're recycling the brickwork that you're going to take out and put that back. All I want to get is a little bit of a feel. Have you had listed buildings before? And also, obviously, I put it without being true. Did you know what you were buying? Did you buy this as a project with a view to reinvigorate this house when you bought it, or just to get a little feel of how you are with this?
So this is the first listed building we've owned. When we bought it, we didn't initially say, we're going to buy it and stick an extension on it. We fell in love with the building. We liked the area, so we've moved here. We then looked at what we wanted to do, and we got our agents, so we got an architect involved, and we got the council officer out so we could talk him through what would be acceptable. So the idea was we would only do what we were allowed to do. So in terms of fixing it, taking down the conservatory is ugly, we want to get rid of it. We want to keep as much character as we can, and we did so. We want to fix the scarring and replace those windows. So we are looking to restore as much as we can. Looking at the scullery, it's a downstairs bathroom at the moment, which we don't need. We have 2 bathrooms upstairs. It was put in there for an old lady who could no longer go upstairs. So we looked at what could we do with that room. It's not usable as it is for anything other than bathroom. So we thought, let's give ourselves a larger dining area and kitchen and build an extension out. So it wasn't not a plan to rip a listed building down. It was a plan to restore it as best we can and try to make better use of it as a modern family. Nobody has a scullery these days. What do you do with a scullery? Okay, but nobody has a usable scullery, that sort of thing. We've basically got a room that it's a downstairs bathroom, which we don't need. So what can we do with it?
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Having said that, this is our first listed building, but we have owned old properties before and done, I don't know, what you'd call it, face image work to it, the painting and the little things. Never done massive extensions or anything like that before. But yeah, we just love the home and want to make it more usable. The current kitchen, which we're looking at turning into a utility room and a downstairs bathroom, that is a really dark kitchen. We've still got the heating on now, you know. We have the lights on most of the time. To build a bigger, darker extension there, at the time when we discussed it with Sam Falco and the architect, it was just seen as impractical to extend a darker room into a bigger, darker room, you know, yeah. So, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer.
Councillor Sennett-Clough.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and either of you can answer. But I just want to go back to Councillor Mark's original question. For clarity then, it sounds to me that you went through the right channels, you sought advice, you got the conservation officer out, and you did all the right things, and then it was recommended for refusal. Is that correct?
That's correct. To be clear, the recommendation for refusal, we were due to come to planning committee, and I believe the chairman or somebody wanted to do a site visit, and for whatever reason was unable to, and because of that, it actually went to default refusal. It never got to committee, was never discussed. It just, the refusal was, you have a default, whatever that is, which you can't undo, because we said, perhaps you can just step in and we can get it through to planning committee. So we've had to resubmit for that reason. It never got to have the discussion that we're having now. So it is pretty much the same proposal, because, yeah.
Any further questions? Thank you very much. I would now like to invite members to put questions to officers. Councillor French.
Thank you. I'm a bit confused here. I think I must be getting old now. At the application, it says government planning guaranteed. Can you tell me what that means? And also, can I have an explanation, because I didn't quite hear what was being said, with regard to this application was refused on the 12th of March 2025. Some 10, 11 weeks later, it's back here. Why?
Through you, Chairman. So in terms of the government planning guarantee, that's on the majority of the committee reports as a response to the issues of sort of 12 months ago, and the shall we say the proximity to designation that we were under as a council in terms of performance on planning applications. Just to flag to members that we're where we are in terms of applications that come in front of you that are due to either expire or where we're due to end up giving the feedback. So it's just for information purposes for members. In terms of the previous applications that were refused back in March, as far as I'm aware, they were determined entirely in accordance with the scheme of delegation at the time. In terms of them, there was, you know, they were, I think one was determined as a straightforward delegated decision, the other was referred to the chairman, and then ultimately were determined through the correct paths in terms of them coming to committee. I don't think there was ever a sort of a guarantee of that happening. As I say, they were determined entirely in accordance with the previous, the scheme of delegation. Clearly, we've now got applications back within, as you say, literally a matter of weeks. One of the main changes being that we've now got 6 letters of support, which triggers the applications coming to planning committee under the scheme of delegation. Hope that helps.
If I may come back, Chairman, I'm still confused. Officers recommended refusal, they refused it. Should have been end of. Why has it come back to this committee 10 weeks so later?
Through you, Chairman, an application's been submitted. It's been progressed, and because of the scheme of delegation, we've got 6 letters of support. It has to come in front of committee.
I really find that explanation unbelievable, David. The first application we had here today took 5 years because there was lots of information. An application was refused on the 12th of... How can that possibly be that another application can go in for the exact same thing and come to committee within a short, very short space of time?
I'm not sure what's unbelievable about it, with respect, Councillor French. That's the situation. Ultimately, what we're looking at here is essentially a house extension, which, as you'll be aware, we have 8 weeks to determine those applications. The previous application that did take 5 years, we're looking at 16 houses with a number of technical issues. I don't think we're not really comparing apples with respect.
I'll come
Councillor French, did you want to go?
No, I'll come back into debate.
Sorry, Councillor St Clough? No. Okay. Okay, any further questions? No. Okay, thank you everyone. I would now like to invite members to debate the item in respect of the material planning considerations relevant to the application. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor Venny, followed by Councillor French.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, I know this house. I knew Jeff Payne that owned it. You know his son David, who lives in Maney and is town councillor. That's where David grew up. He ran his electrical wholesale business, electrical contracting business from there, and he also had what is the estate agents opposite the church in Chatteris. That was his shop. He used to sell tellies and everything. So I haven't been in the house, but I have been in the yard before. Not that any of that has any relevance to what we're talking about, really, but I do know the building.
Yeah.
It is, from the front in the conservation area, it is a lovely building. It is worthy of conservation. It is worthy of keeping in good order. But look at it. Look at the back of it. I mean, it's a mess. We've got a gentleman here that wants to take that poor conservatory down and put a modern room on the back of it. He's going to reuse those bricks to change those awful bricks that they've used up there and put those back in. And I assume they'll be done with lime plaster so it all fits back in and it works nicely. If that's done nicely, that is how conservation should be done. We look at this, it's going to change it from the street scene. This is at the back of the house. Yes, you can see it, but it is a very minor part. And who's to say it's not going to enhance the street scene? You know, it's only whether you view it as an positive or not. I mean, look at that. What is wrong with that? Nothing. But also we've got a building that does have protection, does have historic use to it. But people have got to live here. We talk about public benefit. What about the 2 members of public, maybe more, I don't know, the members of public who live there? They should be able to have a modern house within a listed building. This is where conservation and modern building go hand in hand. I mean, look at it. You read architecture. You've got the old building at the front, and you look at it and you read the back of that building, and you shouldn't, in 50 years' time, be able to tell from the style of architecture what time that was done. And I refer back to the place at Doddington as you head down to the hospital, or the old hospital. You've got the old building and the contemporary part on the back. Oh, it doesn't work. That is a lovely building, and that is what we've got here. So you can tie up listed building and put that into a modern context for a modern home. And that's what this application is about. We are taking some of the back wall out, but we're repairing it. We're taking those bricks out. They're going back into the fabric of the building. That's recycling that. And people have got to live there. And the public benefit should be that the people who live in that house actually end up with a very nice house to live in and not have restraints forced on them by planning applications and planning policy that is more concerned with bricks than it is with people. To me, this application is a good application. I drove past it the other day. I thought the gates had actually gone up, but I can't quite remember. There's something in the driveway. And this will enhance that building. You've got the lovely architecture around the front and the soffits and all the features at the front. That is what we should be looking at conserving. That's what conservation is about. To take some bricks out of a wall and cover them up with a conservatory, that is not in any way detrimental, in my opinion, to damaging the fabric of that building. It's enhancing this building, and in 50 years' time, someone will read the architecture of that building and say, look at that. In the 2020s, they built that on there, doesn't it look good, as it does in the top of Doddington Road. I see nothing wrong with this whatsoever, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor French.
Thank you. I won't disagree with some of what he said. If you go back to that other slide, I mean, that conservatory is absolutely appalling. I'm more concerned with the neighbours. Did that have planning permission? Was it permitted development? I think that's the one we need to be concerned with as well. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer really. That has got to go. It is a listed building. I don't know the house. I don't even know where West Park Street is, do I?
You can find your way home.
Yeah, I agree with what Councillor Benny said. I mean, that is just appalling. Is the house next door listed? No. So that's got planning permission, if it got planning permission, detracting from a listed building. I think we should be looking at that as well.
Councillor Senate Clough and then Councillor Benny again.
Just to say that I completely agree with the points that have been made by Councillor Benny and Councillor French, and to add that these are people that followed the rules, they sought advice, they did everything they could, and it was refused. And I see an opportunity now, as the other members have suggested, to put things right.
Thank you. Councillor Benny.
Yeah, I mean, this makes a mockery of the earlier application, whether the first application was it's the setting of a listed building. I mean, look at that. Right next door to a listed building, you've got that extension on there. Where's the consistency in this? I mean, that is because that is the setting of a listed building. Does that enhance the listed building that we're looking at today? I think not. It's built. The people who bought this house obviously knew it was there when they bought. They buy beware. They're happy with it. The people who live there probably think it's lovely. Great. I'm happy with that. But it is it's the setting of this. Look at it. How do you allow that on the left and say that's within the keeping of keeping the setting of a listed building? It doesn't work. I know this is planning, and I know it's every case individual, and it's very subjective. But look at it.
I think, Councillor Benny, you've summed it up. Subjective it is. I agree with you regarding Doddington. You drive along there, new and old really does work together. Quite honestly, I look at that, I think back to the Travis Perkins time of, well, it became Trigger's Broom. It was, 1880, 1900, no, 1920. LBC bricks, you can see that's just been added on to. I think whatever is done to this, taking down that plastic conservatory, putting something nicer up, it will all match in over a period of time. I personally can see no reason that I wouldn't grant this. But however, I'll wait to hear what other people have to say. Councillor Purser.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, going back on a point that was actually made and sort of enhancing in a funny sort of way, that Councillor Benny was saying, we don't know whether the property on the left has actually had planning permission for that extension. If they have, then goodness knows, God forbid. But I mean, I was under the impression as well that, I know it's a listed building, they actually put it on there, but I was under the impression that there's a square footage size from which they don't actually need planning permission to actually do it. So is it just it's a listed building to actually put this on? I mean, in a funny sort of way, why does it actually need planning permission to do it? Thank you. And that's the only reason, yeah. Okay.
Anybody further? Nope. Okay. Does anybody have any, does any officer have any points of clarification? David.
Through you, Chairman, if I may, I think to pick up one or two bits and pieces. I mean, don't really like talking about the property next door, given that it's not actually material to the determination of the application. However, planning permission was granted for that. As members have indicated, each application is on its own merits. Each listed building has its own setting. Clearly, the setting of this listed building is very much a residential environment where you would expect buildings in close proximity to one another, etc. So I think some of the criticism of that decision from members is somewhat unjustified, I'll be quite frank. In terms of improving the listed building, which is actually the matter in hand this afternoon, yes, there are improvements proposed, which actually the Conservation Officer does support. And I would point out that, for example, the removal of the conservatory, the replacement of the brickwork could actually be done without necessarily the need in extending the building. The issue here is the loss of the actual fabric, the historic fabric of the building in terms of creating the extension. That is what the reason for refusal is based upon. It's nothing to do with the front elevation, it's nothing to do with the street scene, it's the loss of historic fabric through the removal of the scullery, through the sort of internal works to sort of create that area. I mean, I did pick up earlier the comment about nobody has a scullery these days. Applying a similar argument, nobody has a priest hole these days, but do we rip those out of medieval houses? If you want to take that argument to a slightly ridiculous degree, I appreciate, but I think the same principle does exist. And going back to the previous application for list of building, in relation to list of buildings that we had earlier this afternoon, and the issue of giving special regard to preserving a listed building or a setting, what we're talking about here is works of the fabric of the listed building, which would, in the view of officers, detrimentally impact upon the historic significance of that building through the loss of that historic fabric. That is the issue. In terms of public benefit, basically there is no wider public benefit. Appreciate that the applicants may get a slightly better standard of living accommodation. That is not a public benefit. That is a private benefit to those individuals. Hopefully that sums up some of the issues and maybe gives members some further issues to consider. I don't know again whether the legal officer wishes to comment upon the resubmission of a recently refused application and sort of issues contained in the code of conduct regarding that at all, Stephen?
Thank you. Through you, Chairman, that there is the issue which sometimes comes up before members, and I'm sure you will be familiar, but I need to remind you that the planning code of conduct requires a development which has been previously refused. If a member wishes to propose approval, then that member must produce or explain the change in planning circumstances. And as we had a refusal here in March, 2 months ago, then it is incumbent upon the member who proposes approval to explain the change in circumstances. And the fact that the previous approval was under officer delegation is not a change in circumstances. So I just need to remind members that that is your own code of conduct requires that to be done.
Okay. Councillor French.
Yeah, two quick questions. The original extension, which is on there now, did that have planning permission? Or has it been on so long that you wouldn't know, David?
Through your chair, so the original extension in terms, as far as I'm aware, that predates any planning.
You said two questions.
Well, it's not a question. I did ask the question to David earlier, why after so many weeks it was here, and I've listened to what Stephen has said. I cannot come up with the justification to go against with officers' recommendations.
Okay. So, right, as we have two applications, we will take each application in turn. In relation to FYR 250260F, do I have a proposer to go with officer's recommendation to refuse planning permission? Councillor French. Do I have a seconder to go with this recommendation? Okay, so we move on. If you are against the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand. Okay. David.
Through you, Chairman. So, paragraph 9.2 of the report, in the background section, the amendments made to the current submission include reducing the opening in the kitchen and the retention of the existing rear door from the hallway. So, quite sort of minor changes, really, in the overall scheme, in my view.
So,
Can we bring Stephen in at this point?
The Code of Conduct requires the member to point out what significant change in planning circumstances justifies approval. So it's got to be a significant change.
Sorry, put my microphone on. As we see with the building up there, it's, you know, what, with the extension next door, it's an opinion as to how this is. Now, as a committee, personally, I feel if the opening has been made small enough, that is a significant enough change. Personally, I feel that is sufficient. Therefore, in my opinion, if I put a proposal forward to approve this, I feel there is a significant change there. It's how do you define significant? Personally, I feel that is a significant enough change to approve this application. But you've got to define to me what is significant and what is not. I feel that is.
Yeah, through you, Chairman, the code doesn't define what is significant, and it's a matter for members to determine, provided you act rationally. Then if you decide something is significant, then that's what you can do, provided you are not behaving irrationally.
Yeah, in that case then, Mr. Chairman, I would like to propose that we go against officer's recommendation on both applications and approve this. I feel, personally, that if the changes made in making the opening smaller are significant enough to be different, and therefore that means this is a different application, and therefore we could approve this application. See if I get a seconder.
Helpful to just try and clarify further.
David. Yeah.
Through you, Chairman. I don't know whether it would be helpful just to try and clarify sort of further. I'm going to try an experiment with whether the pointer on here works. So essentially, that doorway there, which is proposed, was originally going to be a kind of a double door. So essentially, that is the only change. So instead of being a double door, that is effectively a single door.
So to clarify, that is changing the fabric of the building, which is the old building.
So therefore we're leaving extra brickwork.
Yeah, that's true, Chair. That is the historic fabric. That's one of the parts of the rear elevation.
Thank you. Councillor Benny. Sorry, Councillor French, then Councillor Benny.
yeah, I think the discussion now is what is significant and what is not. I certainly don't think this is a significant change to warrant the approval. It is a shame, but it is a listed building. And I'm sorry, Councillor Benny, but I don't feel this is significant.
There we are, Mr. Chairman. We have a difference of opinion. But who is right and who is wrong? I personally
Well,
feel
we have a proposal to go against officer's recommendation on this.
I did actually propose the opposite.
You did, but you didn't get a seconder.
Okay.
So we'll move on from there. If not, we'll be here till 7 o'clock. So we have a proposal to go against officer's recommendation on the first one and grant planning. So do you have a seconder, Councillor Benny? Councillor Purser, so we now have a seconder to go against officer recommendation and to grant planning permission on this application. All those in favour? Sorry. Do you want to give your reasons for doing so? I think he has really. He's trying to work out what significant
I
is.
feel this is significant enough. You're leaving an extra piece of wall. If you took that as a percentage of the total width of the back of that building, that is a significant amount of brickwork you are leaving there. Hence the word significant and the change. I feel that is changing this, and it's leaving additional brickwork in.
Sorry,
David.
through you, Chairman. No, I think I was looking. I think we've kind of gone beyond the significant issue in terms of what I was suggesting needed to come forward was the actual reasons for granting the application. So the actual sort of planning reasons for doing that, and also recognising the NPPF balance of public benefit outweighing harm, etc.
I personally feel that this is going to enhance the house in terms of public benefit. How do you get public benefit out of this? But how do you then prove public detriment by doing this? That's a two-edged sword. You could argue that one both ways. I don't think it does any detriment.
Personally, I think taking down the existing conservatory that's there, that's really not in keeping, and also the LBC bricks that we've got as well, with the work that's going to be proposed to be done, I think it actually enhances, if anything.
Also, as you say, this is recycling those bricks that come out of there. That's going to tidy not tidy, it's going to add to the enjoyment of this historic building by having these. We're having wooden windows put in, whereas it's got plastic at the moment, and I'm fairly certain those windows will probably come at the break shape. They look a bit 70s-ish to me, the ones that are there. They would be more in keeping with the building. So there is benefit to that building. It may not be public benefit, but it is benefit to that building from the additional works that are going to be done by taking down the poor conservatory that is there, and we are only replacing a conservatory with a conservatory. And I would imagine that doesn't come out more than 4 metres, and it's 4 metres high, so therefore it wouldn't, if it wasn't for the fact it's a listed building, it wouldn't even need planning permission anyway, but I get where we are with it. There is the benefit of doing this work is putting that building back to a better state than it is before the work started.
Thank you. Councillor Senate-Clough.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I would be having voted against an application earlier that I thought could harm a listed building. I would not vote on to support an application I thought would harm a listed building. So in this case, I feel that by the changes that are proposed, there's a potential for long-term sustainability of the building. There's no damage to the structural integrity. It creates resilience to the building, and actually it's potentially reversible. So I feel that for those reasons, I support Councillor Benny's proposal.
Thank you. Could we now put it to the vote? All those in favour to grant? No, on the first application. Planning permission, sorry, to grant planning permission.
That's 4 votes, Chairman.
All those against?
2 votes, Chairman.
That application has been granted. Okay, we now move on to the second application, which is FYR 250261-LB. Do I have a proposer to go with offerer's recommendation to refuse planning permission? Councillor French, do you have a seconder? Councillor Gerstner. We will now go to the vote. If you support the proposal to go with offerer's recommendation, please raise your hand.
2 votes, Chairman.
If you are against the proposal to go with officer's recommendation, please raise your hand.
It's 4 votes, Chairman.
Okay, that vote has failed. So can I ask for a different proposal? Councillor Benny.
I'll have a go at this one, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I propose that we go against officer's recommendation on this one and approve this application.
Okay.
Reasons as stated previously.
So you're happy to use the previous stated reasons?
Yes.
Nothing to add?
No.
No. Okay. Okay. Do I have a seconder for this proposal? Councillor Senate-Clough. We will now go to the vote. If you support the new proposal, please raise your hand.
4 votes, Chairman.
If you are against the new proposal, please raise your hand.
2 votes, Chairman.
That application has been granted to go against officer's recommendation. With conditions via David. This concludes today's meeting. Thank you all for attending. A reminder that the next meeting is on the 11th of June, 2025. The time now is 4:30.